Meeting back to order. It's 1:30. What we're going to do, if that's okay with everybody, I believe it would be nice if we did have, even though we're going to go right back to the work session, let's try to get, as we can, and start the meeting like we would if we were going straight into the meeting. So, with that, we're going to convene this meeting. We're going to call to order. I would like invocation. And Pastor, if you'd like to come on up, please, sir. We're going to start. Right up here, sir.
Okay. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for being the kind of God you are, and that you're concerned about our every need, and we can lift up our eyes to you and seek help. And you've promised that if anyone lacks wisdom, he can ask of you, and you give to all men liberally and do not scold. And so we thank you for that. We ask for wisdom for these folks as they meet today and consider things that have to do with the governing of this county. And Lord, give them wisdom, give them insight, and use them to make wise decisions is our prayer. Give each one strength and health for today. For it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Let me just see who's here today. Bill, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, thank you very much. Pastor, thank you very much. And we're going to go right back into the work session and where we were. Please, Rebecca.
Good afternoon. For the record, Rebecca Hammack, Development Services Director. This is actually the last slide on the Arbor portion of the presentation, so I didn't know if we wanted to follow up with any more discussion on the Arbor regulations as well as the proposed amendments to the subdivision section of the Land Development Code and the site plan section of the Land Development Code related to tree protection and removal. And then in the interest of time, I think we were going to skip discussion on the residential neighborhood pattern as well as missing middle housing because Eliza did have to leave for another meeting.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, so are we going to jump over and come back to connectivity?
Yes, so the connectivity is part of the residential neighborhood pattern
I'm fine.
discussion.
You don't need to go any further.
Okay, so if you would, Rebecca, yeah, I was going to mention that we were going to skip the residential neighborhood pattern and the missing middle. That was something that Eliza was going to handle, but we were still on the, let's say, the development section of the Arbor ordinance, so let's try to get that settled if we could, please.
Sure.
Or as best we can. So go right ahead.
Sure. So the regulations or the proposed amendments to the ordinance that are included in your agenda package are actually to Chapter 60, the Arbor regulations. However, at the last work session, based on discussion, we are also proposing two other amendments that we discussed this morning, and one is to the site plan section of the Land Development Code, which is Chapter 40.83, and then we're also recommending a amendment to Section 35.61, which is the subdivision regulations. And both those sections would be requiring a minimum tree protection for new development. And currently, the site plan regulations allow for a maximum removal of 75% of the existing trees. So we're proposing to also include those same regulations for subdivision for residential development, and so it would allow a maximum of 75% of the protected trees to be removed. However, there are provisions in there where a waiver can be requested to the Board of County Commissioners if the applicant does not agree with the determination of the planning manager, and then the planning manager can make the the decision that to allow more than 75% removal if she determines or he determines that there is a circumstance that meets the Florida statute for inordinately burdened. So I guess we're looking for direction from the board if they're in agreement with staff's recommendation on those changes.
I concur.
And yes, and could you go just the, if we could have a little bit more of the definite, or what the punishment or the
Punishment?
the punishment, I know, it's a terrible word. But, you know, you were talking about the fines and the regulations and things of that nature. The consultant was going to do that, so.
Sure. I'll talk just generally about it, and then I can let Greg get into more specifics. But the way that the ordinance, the arbor ordinance is set up now is the larger the tree that you remove, the more inches that you have to replace. And the proposed amendments actually make that an even stricter or an even increased replacement requirement when you're getting into the specimen trees and historic trees. So it becomes, more difficult to, or I guess, it becomes sort of a balancing act for the developer. Is it better to just retain the existing trees or have to replace the trees?
And currently, there is no restriction, it's 100%, now you're going back to 75%, is that correct?
For residential subdivisions and the subdivision regulations, there's currently no requirement for a minimum amount of tree retention. However, we do still have replacement requirements. That has always been in the code. So if you're removing trees off-site, you are required to replace those trees. However, we do work with people in certain instances, we'll have them upsize trees and things like that to try to meet the inches, their required replacement inches.
Let me take this another way. Does anybody have objection to the recommendation of the staff that they're putting together right now? 75%? Okay.
Not at 75%,
Okay.
no.
All right. Anybody? All right, so I think you have a consensus to go forward. And so we've come up with the 5 acres to 2 acres on the residential. I think that's also the request. I think everybody has said, what are other people doing to protect historic trees in single-family residence? We said we would look at any other options other than the onerous one that was discussed previously. And now you have now you have a consensus on the land development for the residential subdivisions, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Is there anything else on that?
Not on
our-
that, and then we can move forward. If it's okay with the board, we can move forward to discussion on the net developable
Yes,
density.
please
Okay.
go right into that. Thank you.
Actually, we don't have anything, do we?
Supposed to see that?
So on page 86 of the agenda, that's where the handouts are associated with the net developable density discussion start. There is a memo that Mary included in the agenda package. We also have comparisons to the net developable density calculation in other jurisdictions, as well as the spreadsheet that we began keeping track of back in 2015. So just as a little bit of history, in 2014, the Board of County Commissioners adopted Ordinance 2014-46, amending the comprehensive plan, which did amend the definition of net developable in the urban area of the county. And as part of that, the road rights-of-way and transmission lines no longer had to be excluded from your developable acreage. So that definition in the rural area still applies, but in the urban area, you do not have to exclude road rights-of-way or transmission lines. And so based on that new definition, we have been keeping track of the impact of that to the development and how many additional lots that has provided, and that spreadsheet is in the agenda package. And With the new definition, there has been an increase of approximately 14.7% in net yield of lots. There is a loss of lots after engineering, but of course, that would be the same under the old definition as well. So I
Any
believe
que-
this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, this was a request from the board, I believe at the last work session, to bring this back for discussion.
Any questions? Any questions? Is there, does anybody have any comments? I think that basically in the, okay, thank you very much. We now have a number of people that want to talk. I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, that there has been a consensus, and maybe I'm mistaken, but a consensus to go back to the old one, to the old definition. Am I incorrect in that? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know that you're incorrect in that. I'm not sure that Commissioner Herr was here for a lot of the conversation, so I'd hate to thrust that on her when she wasn't really here.
Commissioner
So-
Herr, do you have any comments?
I don't. There's 4 of you and 1 of me, and I'll be respectful of that. So I'd like to hear your comments.
Okay. Back in 2014, there was a proposal by a particular commissioner saying that everybody else does this, so we should do it also. I can read it from there. There was a, I'm sorry?
It's not exactly how it went down.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's a
Maybe-
pretty short version of it.
I'm trying to be short,
Understood.
okay? I am trying to be short. The discussion was that a number of different counties were going one direction, a number of different counties were, and so therefore we should go in that same direction. There was some debate and discussion. It was a 3-2 vote at that time to go with the new definition, and the definition was expressed by Ms. Hammack. The fact of the matter is in that definition, we didn't really know the consequences of what would occur. The consequences have been that we are basically providing 15% more density without, especially when it came to PDs, before even negotiation. And I have been consistent, and I think others have too. Mr. Zimbauer was consistent during the planning and zoning also, I think that our citizens and others would be much better served if we had more flexibility in the debate and discussion when we're talking about zoning than then providing that additional 15%, which means 15% more seats in the classroom, 15% more transportation and traffic. And it has been consistent, 14.7% over the course of time. And just like in the previous one, you do lose sometimes a little bit in doing that. But the fact of the matter is that, and I could go on and on and on, and I'm not going to, but the fact of the matter is, I feel that it is better served for our citizens that we have more control in the density than just providing that density arbitrarily. Commissioner Zimbauer?
Thank you, Chairman. Real quickly, I'll try to be brief. Yes, that is correct. I was on the P&Z, chair of the P&Z at the time, and I was the lone vote against the change back then. The one thing I will note, I would like, albeit maybe some brief discussion amongst my fellow commissioners, that we really didn't know what this was going to do, and staff, I think, has done a good job of tracking that and accounting for that. And if you'll note, if you've looked through this, on some requests, it makes little to no difference.
Correct.
At all. On others, now, there are significant impacts to the amount of units. After sitting back, after those years of moving forward, I can see how there could be a circumstance, a special exception. Do we want to consider any review process on extenuating circumstance for some of those that could be significantly impacted or not? Just a matter of topic for discussion.
Sure, please.
So I saw that differential as well, and what do we attribute that to? Is it the size of the overall parcel being developed?
I think it has more to do with the amount of easement or right-of-way that happens to be on that particular parcel as compared to another parcel.
Got it.
And as Commissioner Zimbauer said, and like I said, I did not want to belabor the point, but give you an example, a recent one. Bertram's Landing, which was very controversial, as we all recall, was given automatically 24% more density than would have been in the previous, previous definition. River Run Reserve, 22% additional. I think River's Edge itself, we approve it at 63. I think it would have been 50. It's just a question of, we can always in PDs provide more, but we were automatically giving that and then starting at the negotiating point there.
Right.
And I think it well serves our citizens that we be more conservative when it comes to that. And then if those circumstances provide that it does desire more density, which in some cases it should, and it does, we can provide that. We can offer that. The developer can suggest that and show why it is important for the citizens that currently exist here in Seminole County that we have the higher density, as opposed to starting at a point, why in a negotiation would we ever put ourselves in a posture where we are having to explain why it should be less, as opposed to, others.
Well, likewise, of course, part of this whole overhaul and look at our code, we're trying to move away from as many PDs as we've been doing in the past and get those cleaned up. So ultimately, we should, if we ultimately do our staff and our consultants and we do our job, there should be fewer PDs as we go forward.
So, Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, I know PD has become a four-letter word in our discussions of late, but I mean, there is a place and time for them, and so I don't want our staff or the community to think that every time a PD is coming forward, it should be a bad thing or looked on negatively, because they need to be used appropriately. So can we have, Nicole, maybe have staff address that issue? Because
So I will weigh in on it.
Yes, sure.
I'll weigh in and not put Rebecca in that position, and although Rebecca's opinion may be different than mine. PDs are more labor-intensive for staff. But frankly, as a planning and development tool, I prefer them over straight zoning because they allow you to address the specific characteristics of the land. That being said, I think that there could be an argument made that perhaps some of our PD standards are too open-ended, and so we may not, I don't think it's because they're PDs we're not ending up with the results that we might want. I think it's because of the way our PD ordinance is structured. I think they could actually be really beneficial to the community. So I don't think it's the fact that they're PDs, I think it's how we have our PD structured.
okay, thank you for clarifying that. 'Cause
And I think that's a comment that you've made in the past, Commissioners, that, if PDs are not a bad thing.
Right.
But what has happened is, over the course of time, we have become the ones that allow others to negotiate for themselves, and we have not negotiated for ourselves as strongly as we could. And I think that this board has shown that they may be in a different posture than that.
Another follow-up. Is there a legal limit to the negotiation that we can put forward? I mean, where are we?
Well, I think there's a limit to the extent, and I'll let Bryant weigh in as well, of course. I think the legal limit is the extent to which your regulations related to PDs are structured. So you're confined by that. Now, so I don't know that it's a fact that we're not negotiating as well as we could. I think we have a structure that allows a great deal of latitude and perhaps permits projects that are not what was originally intended when the PD zoning district was established.
That's right.
County Manager, I was thinking more on our end of not doing negotiations as much. We can get as much as we can depending upon what the developer is willing to give.
I think you only have so far that you can push
Yes,
right now,
right,
based on the
right,
structure of the PD regulations.
We can't ask for the moon because it's not outlined.
Correct.
So asking for the moon would be inappropriate based on our current structure.
Correct, because yes, I'll just leave it at that, yes.
Okay. Do I sense a consensus here to go back, and therefore, Ms. Hammack, that mean you could, what I guess would be required here as a motion is to develop an ordinance that would put us in the posture that we are going where we were before, correct?
Yes, so it will require staff to bring forward an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan, because that's where the definition was amended. And we're currently actually working on an ordinance now to create the private property rights elements that was required by the new law. So we could probably do those at the same time.
Would that be a motion that someone would make?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes unanimously. Now, folks, in the audience, and because we were moving in the direction I think they wanted us to move, there are 5 people here that wish to speak on this, or 4 people that wish to speak on, 5, I'm sorry, that wish to speak on this. Ms. Hammond only wanted to say that she was in favor of going back to the old definition. Ms. Haller, I think that you're here to say the same thing. Is that not correct? I'm sorry?
I just have a short thing to say.
Okay, but we just did, I think, what you want, right?
Yeah, I just wanted
Okay,
to...
go ahead, please.
If I could. Thank you.
Thanks. Cindy Holler, not an expert, just a citizen. So I do appreciate the board allowing me to speak. Thank you. So basically, I'm happy we're going back to the old definition. I think what we need to use is that was done before 2014, like was discussed. You can't build on a road, so roads should definitely be excluded, and lakes and wetlands. And also, I want to say, obviously, we need to maintain our quality of life. People leave poor quality of life states that are overdeveloped and overtaxed to come here. So seriously, let's hold firm and with our quality of life and not become California, New York, New Jersey. I could go on. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. And then I was requested to read this into the record very quickly. It says this is from Ms. Harmon. Net buildable acreage, the total number of acres within a perimeter boundaries of a development, excluding areas devoted to right-of-way, widths, transmission and power line easements, lakes, and areas defined as wetlands and flood-prone areas. So in other words, she was in favor of what we just did. And Mr. Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys waves in support. Thank you, Mr. Humphreys. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman?
Oh, but I don't have a yellow card.
I added it to the
I can't understand, I can't hear a word you're saying.
She agrees.
She waves in.
You agree, you
Shannon's
wave in
waves in
support. Thank you very much. I don't see your card, though, I'm sorry. I don't have it in front of me. Okay, so now we're going to move on to other issues before we go backwards. Mr. Hooper.
Yes, sir.
Hopper.
Sorry. I'll try to be brief.
Yes, Mr. Hopper.
For the record, Jeff Hopper, Principal Planner. Just talking about 3 items that staff has been working on independently from the consultant. Mainly, this is housekeeping material, not very controversial. There's one item that I'll get to in a minute that we'll ask for some board direction. The first topic is buffering and landscaping. As you may know, we have a what's called a part within the code, Part 67, that deals with landscaping requirements. There's another section that talks about technical material like irrigation and plant qualities and those types of things located in Part 64, which is entitled Off-Street Parking. So, you know, the first thing we would propose is to take that material and put it in the other section so that all the plants are in one place. So that's our first bullet point. Another bullet point that we would like to do regarding buffers is to just make a brief statement somewhere in that code that the buffer requirements as applied to any specific development can be varied but through approval of a planned development or a special exception. We kind of operate that way anyway. The planned developments don't necessarily follow the code. They're based on whatever's negotiated. So this would explicitly say that that could happen. The next bullet point, there are times when the code, the methodology of the code tells us, you know, your buffer against a road must include a wall. You know, that was not really our intent in creating the code. It's just sort of a function of the mechanical part of it. So we would add an option to change that wall into something more, you know, more attractive, more reasonable, such as a, you know, a hedge or a decorative fence type of thing. Next bullet point, there are times when an old PD plan or an overlay, some portion of the code says you must put canopy trees in a certain place, and there are overhead power lines above that place. We don't want to require people to plant live oaks under power lines. So in those situations, we would allow the director to change that canopy tree requirement to understory trees with a formula, 3 understories for 1 canopy. So that would be an administrative decision that would be made for particular developments. And another thing would be to eliminate buffer requirements between most single-family subdivisions. In practice, compatibility between single-family is addressed primarily through lot sizes anyway. In other words, not putting small lots adjacent to big lots and that type of thing. Where buffers are required, they often end up as kind of strips of no man's land that are not easily maintained. So that would be the reason for that change. And then there are just miscellaneous tweaks and wording clarifications that we would get into.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, does anybody have any questions on the miscellaneous tweaks?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe that the presentation that staff is giving us with their request for buffers and landscaping changes here are very reasonable, and I would have no issue moving forward with these recommended changes.
Concur.
Anybody else? Commissioner Hurt.
So mark this down as me being the problem now. So I just have 2 very quick comments that might not need comments on top of the comments. So 3rd bullet point down addresses the issue where the rule is so restrictive that it doesn't make sense. And then we're adding language that is also restrictive, because now we've added 2 additional options, but they're very specific, and I would just say, while we're doing this, we may not want to be that specific. And then 2nd bullet up, eliminate buffer requirements between most. I'm not sure, that's an opinion, so I would take the word most out,
Okay.
because it's just, you eliminate the requirement when it makes sense, which you don't want to put that in there, but most has an
Yeah,
implication
that's-
that you should be eliminating it. So give us the leeway to put one in.
I have no problem with that.
All done.
Okay, Mr. Hopper, you're
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes, sir.
You have the directions that you need on that?
Yes, I do. I have 2 other short topics. Regarding open space. Open space has its own cohesive set of regulations. It isn't just referenced in one district or another. And we don't propose to change any of that, just to boost it in the hierarchy, so to speak, so that it's easier to find. Instead of being buried in district supplemental regulations, it would be, you know, easier to find on the table of contents. And that's what that's about. And then the final item is about mini storage or self-storage as possibly becoming a permitted use in our commercial districts. The way we operate now, we don't distinguish between a mini storage and a full-on warehouse. And what that means is a mini storage is treated as something that needs industrial zoning, industrial land use. So with this idea, there could be a list of conditions addressing the appearance, whatever, fencing, storage bays not being visible from the road, this type of thing, that would make self-storage, something that just fits into a commercial corridor. And if they could meet the conditions in the checklist, it simply becomes a permitted use. And with your endorsement of that idea, we'll go forward and bring some more specific regulations to look at.
Mr. Chairman?
Questions, yes?
I have no
Or
issue.
comments?
I have no issues with the suggested changes. The only comment I would have on the self-storage is I can understand why it went into industrial because of outside storage.
Right, and that's something we can address.
And I'm just making the comment.
Yes, sir.
That can be addressed with your recommendations.
Yes.
Other comments?
No objections.
Okay,
That's all I have, sir.
well, Mr. Hooper, we do have somebody that,
It's just the man's name.
no, I know, and I said it, I'm mad at myself. I said Hopper. Said
No
Hooper.
problem.
Jeff, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm going to call you Jeff. Okay, I believe this is from public. Linda, I can't read your last name.
Parker,
Miss Parker.
with a business.
Barker, thank you very much. Come on up.
Just call it Linda.
Where would you like?
Yeah, I'll
to
just
be?
call her Linda. Yeah,
Over you.
yes.
Thank you. My name is Linda Barker, 3405 South Mellonville Avenue, Sanford, Florida, and formerly on the Planning and Zoning Board for Sanford. So, number 3, where in reference to the masonry wall, that is something that can be very easily maintained. And the one that we had on Cornwall got pretty nasty looking, and finally the community even offered to paint it, but it took a little bit of paint and we're back in business. 3-foot hedge, well, you know what happens to hedges. There is a blight going around that's destroying the viburnum hedges right now, and then I can see perhaps masonry and maybe a combination of metal fence, but to me, that whole metal fence there is too ambiguous. The canopy trees, bullet point number 4. I can understand very much because I don't really like the butchering of the canopy trees that are in the Y shape to accommodate power lines. So I can see understory trees underneath would be good, but I don't like the way this is written because it sounds like you can get rid of a canopy tree and replace it with understory trees where the development's on Celery Avenue. It all looks like it's myrtles. It's very disturbing. It just looks like somebody clear cut, and landscaping is pretty minimal. So we need to have more canopy trees preserved or at least replaced. And besides, it's good for the environment, for our oxygen circulation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Linda.
And just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, this is not verbatim. This is just what your staff's working on. You're going to bring back to us the detailed, in-depth, thank you. That's what I thought, just for the record.
And so you've noted those comments, and we can expect, at least, a little discussion about that before bringing it back. Thank you very much, Jeff. Okay. Can't go wrong there. All right. Is there anything else, Rebecca? All right. Woo-hoo. Fantastic. Let's go on to a few minutes with Nicole.
So I might take more than a few minutes, so I might suggest that maybe we defer this until the county manager report, because I think there are folks
You want to do the county manager report?
here for items on the agenda.
We can do
And
that.
so rather than holding them up,
Nobody has objection to that? Perfect.
I think there's people here for this discussion as well.
Yeah,
You have both.
whatever you would like, then we can roll
well, I
right
think
into
that
this.
the rest of the meeting, we might be able to go pretty quick. And
I don't
Mr.,
know.
I'm so
Speaking of
proud
oxygen.
of I'm
We-
so
we
proud of
consume a
Mr.
lot of it.
Towers. He's been so patient, which is not normal for him. So we're going to go right into the county manager consent agenda. Is there anything new for the agenda, county manager,
Not for the consent agenda, no, sir.
other than you added 25?
There are 25 that's under the county manager report, but you could certainly approve it as part of the consent agenda. It does not require a public hearing.
In this, it was part of the, is there anybody that wishes to take anything from 4 through 22 and 25 off of the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the consent agenda 4 through 22, including 25.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none,
Do we need
all
for
in
the
favor?
pub- do we need
Yes,
for the public?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I did not have any cards from the public. Was there any public that wishes to speak on it? I didn't think so. Okay, but again, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody knows to get their cards in if they have anything to speak on. So we are now at 23. 23 is on the ILA, or the Interlocal Agreement for Public School Facilities and Planning and School. Rebecca, I see your name is up there, but I also know the county manager probably will add some things. Go ahead, Ms. Hammack.
Good afternoon. For the record, Rebecca Hammack, Development Services Director. The item before you is a request for approval of the 2021 interlocal agreement for public school facility planning and school concurrency. In 2019, the school district requested that the ILA be amended in order to better align it with school board policy. Seminole County Board of County Commission work sessions were held on January 12th, 2021, and on February 9th, 2021, to discuss the amendments to the agreement. Based on discussion at the work sessions and follow-up meetings with Seminole County staff and comments from PTAC, the school board staff prepared a version of the agreement that was presented to the Board of County Commissioners on March 23rd, 2021. That version incorporated all the amendments that had been developed up to that point. At the March 23rd, 2021 meeting, the BCC voted 3-2 to adopt the ILA with the following change to Section 15.1. The proposed amendment read, "This agreement may be amended by written consent of no less than 88% of all parties to this agreement. The agreement will remain in effect until amended in accordance with Florida statutes." Subsequent to the BCC's action on March 23rd, 2021, the PSFPC asked that the parties consider alternative language. The county and representatives from Seminole County Public Schools further collaborated and revised language in sections 11.2, 13.1A, and 15.1, which are highlighted in yellow in the proposed amendments, which are included in your agenda package. All other sections of the ILA remain as presented to the board on March 23rd. These revisions were also presented to the participating city managers on June 17th, 2021, without objection. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the 2021 interlocal agreement as revised for public school facility planning and school concurrency. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Ms. Hammack? County Manager, would you like to add anything? Because I know that you were deep in these negotiations.
I was deep in these negotiations. I think that the direction that I had been given at a prior meeting was to get with the superintendent to try to resolve the issues that were of concern of this board, as well as some of the concerns that the school board had with our proposed language. And I think where we landed I think it's a good place, and I think it addresses the concerns that were expressed here, and I don't want to speak for the school board, but I believe that it addresses the concerns they had with the original language. So, and as Rebecca indicated, we have socialized this with the cities on a staff level, and it appears that there were no objections when we discussed it with the city managers. So I would recommend that the board go ahead and move forward with these changes.
Thank you very much. Hearing that, is there any questions? Discussion or motion? Commissioner Herr,
I move to approve.
Second.
motion and second. Discussion. Commissioner Zimbauer.
I would like to take an opportunity to thank the superintendent, existing and previous, as well as our county manager and our member to the representing this board, and moving forward also the county attorney's office, I do want to make sure that the white paper that I requested be part of the record in this matter, so that it's preserved for future boards.
From the attorney.
Mr. Attorney, would you like to explain that?
For the record, the paper that Commissioner Zenbauer is referring to is the legal opinion dated June 10th, 2021, from my office to the board concerning the question about can a Board of County Commissioners lock in future boards in perpetuity? And so that was addressed in the paper.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public? I have no cards to speak on this. Any members of the public before we vote? Any further discussion by the commissioners? Commissioner Herr.
I just wanted to thank all of the members of the committee, not just our staff and our team, but the school board's members, all of the cities that participated in this. It seems like this was like giving birth to an elephant times two. And probably exhausting in some respects. So I am very, very thankful that we have people that volunteer at that level to participate and bring it over the finish line.
Chairman Colton, question.
County Manager, I'd also like to thank you for getting involved with that, because I do believe that that was something that was very important for all of us to come to consensus with, so thank you very much. And with that, is any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes. All right, we have public hearing legislation here. I am first item where I need a public hearing agenda, accepted proof of publication.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, passes unanimously. I'm sorry?
I think you're good.
I'm good, okay.
There's no quasi-judicial. so
There's
you're good.
no quasi-judicial, so I do not have to make that long statement today. So we're going to go right into the public hearing legislation, adoption of notice procedure, comprehensive plan text amendment, and land development code amendments.
So, good afternoon. For the record, Mary Moskowitz, Planning and Development Services. Dagmary Segura, she's the project manager for this project. She is in the audience. Unfortunately, she has laryngitis today and asked me to present.
Aren't you lucky?
I know, so, I do what I can. So, as the chairman said, this item on the agenda is to consider the ordinance enacting a comprehensive plan of text amendments regarding the public participation and public notification for public hearings, and the adoption of the associated ordinance enacting the corresponding revisions to the Land Development Code. Just a little bit of background on this item. This was at the request of the Board of County Commissioners to update and increase the effectiveness of the county's public notification process. We held a workshop on this on January 12th. We went to the P&Z on March 3rd and to this board on March 23rd for transmittal to the state. Again, just for your information and for the audience, for the public, the comprehensive plan amendment amends the implementation element of the comprehensive plan for public participation. We've increased the minimum notification radius to 50 feet. We've provided language pertaining to the criteria in the Land Development Code. So we took a lot of that technical language that was in the comp plan and put it in the Land Development Code where it belongs. And then we also provide language for the community meeting requirements. As far as the Land Development Code, that's where that technical language comes in, and we've created the table which provides the increased mailing notification radiuses. We've also increased the minimum to 15 days for the notifications to mail out our notifications, and then we've also created the procedures for the placards. We've increased those to the 24 by 36, so the much bigger kind of real estate-esque signs that you see. They also must be posted 15 days prior to the hearing, and we've added that requirement that they must be clearly visible from the street, and preferably a main street like a collector or arterial road. And finally, we actually added the requirements for the community meeting. This is for all land use amendments, zoning map amendments, non-residential variances, and our special exceptions. So some of the revisions that we made based on the last hearing is that we also included the mail notifications for the residential variances, and so those also must be sent 15 days prior to the hearing. And then we've also clarified the notifications for the community meetings, so those notifications must meet the same buffer standards that we are doing the notices for. So if we're sending you a notice for the community, for the public hearing, you'll also be on the list for the community meetings as well. And finally, we added some revisions to the recording of the community meetings so that we note that those meetings must be recorded. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the amendment enacting the ordinance, amending the comprehensive plan, and the corresponding ordinance to the revisions to the land development code. Dag Marie is here to answer any questions that you may have, but staff is here to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yes, Commissioner?
We've, at least, I know many of us have spoken to staff quite a bit on this, and I think we've all been briefed several times. I want to thank the staff for their hard work, but I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a comprehensive plan text amendment regarding public participation and public notice for public hearings, and adopt the associated ordinance enacting the corresponding revisions to Land Development Code as presented here today.
Second.
Motion and second.
I would just like to point out that this is a public hearing.
Yeah,
and-
I understand. Everybody wants to tell me what to do. Okay, no, I do have some people that wish to speak before, I'm sorry? Yeah, that's right.
Welcome to the rest of our worlds.
Okay, everybody's running down here with papers now. I'm, nobody's learned the lesson. I get it.
Yes, not.
All right, hold on.
Maybe you should announce it multiple times.
Yeah, you think I have it already?
Maybe multiple.
Multiple. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we'll wait.
Should we take a
Well,
break?
we'll just go, well, we have a motion. Let's just finish this up right now. We have a motion. First of all, I have from Ms. Harmon, written comments. She couldn't be here. She said, to the public notice, add groups such as Save Rural Seminole, GCA, Bear Warriors, Sustainability Leaders Initiative, and Smart Development Groups. To the notice. I'm sorry?
What's the request? do
To
what?
add them to the notices. To the
Well-
notices, public notices.
What?
But this is just public comment. We
Right.
listened
I just
to
want to
it.
better understand the comment. I'm not sure.
She's not here.
Oh,
I'm sorry. She just asked me to read that into
Okay.
the record. It's not on the agenda. Okay, Ms. Haller? Ms. Adams, you're next. Mr. Humphreys after that, and Ms. Barker.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Chairman, appreciate it. Cindy Holler, 1731 Beacon Drive, Sanford.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. What is-
Yeah, Cindy, would you please speak up? We couldn't hear you.
Okay, let me start again. Okay. So, thank you, Chairman. Cindy Holler, 1731 Beacon Drive, Sanford. And so, anyway, I wanted to say that, yeah, I like the changes that staff is wanting to implement, and I have some other things to add. So, the Zoom meetings that were started, with the pandemic, should continue. So there is a petition that was started 6 days ago. It has 290 signatures on it. So there's multiple reasons I wanted to share why people felt that this was important. By the way, there was a mom here who brought her girls. They're being just excellent. Way back there, you see. Kids aren't always excellent at meetings, but those girls are.
Mr. Chairman, Cynthia, I can't hear you.
We can't hear a word you're
You have to
saying.
come to this microphone. Okay, sorry. I think it's the mic.
Okay, better?
Much better.
Really? Okay. All right, I don't know. Okay, so what I was saying is that the Zoom portion of the meetings that was started before with the pandemic, I think should continue. So I'd like to see that reinstated. I'd like to hear Nicole's take on that when I get done speaking. So I was going to say in the back here, there's a mom that brought her girls, and they're being just excellent back here. Kids aren't always like that, so I know I have a couple. Anyway, so here's some of the signers on this petition that was started 6 days ago, 290 signers, but some people leave comments. I'll read a couple, and then I'll pass it to the BCC to take a look. The Zoom option provides more access and openness to our government proceedings. Please continue to allow a virtual option to meetings so everyone interested can attend. Not everyone has an immune system that allows them to get the vaccine. Virtual gives all an opportunity to be involved despite their medical concerns. And then I'll just read like one more. Let's see. Our county electives need to be 100% transparent and ready to hear the citizens' input to all meetings, no closed doors. So if you could, I didn't want to read all of it. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to read, so making the agenda available a couple of weeks earlier is, if that's possible, that's a good idea. Accessibility directly via link when it gets posted next door or the county Facebook page also would be helpful to people to connect for public input. Easier for gathering public input on studies or other, things they want to comment on. So if it can be accomplished by a click on the link, that would be, it'd be a benefit to all. And I believe what Ms. Harmon was trying to say is that groups should be notified. Some of the ones that come to mind to me, GCA, Geneva Citizens Association, Save Rural Seminole, Sustainable Leaders Initiative, Environmental Advisory Board, Smart Development, Seminole Audubon, Friends of the Wekiva River, even nearby HOAs, where there was going to be developments. Maybe also Seminole County Soil and Water Commission, but hopefully they would know. Bear Warriors United. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Also, in Ms. Harmon's discussion, she said, please bring back Zoom participation. We need to ensure our parties have the opportunity to participate. I wanted to make sure she got that. Callie, Ms. Adams?
And Ms. County Manager, I know that you plan to address that issue. I don't know if you want to wait and do it after all of the public comment, but it might be good for others who might be intending to speak on that to know that you do have some comments about it.
Yeah, Ms. Adams, if you could just hold letter, I'd like to hear the county manager.
Because it'll take a second. We are aware of the petition and the request to continue the Zoom meetings. We are doing, they're actually very labor intensive. I know it doesn't necessarily look like that up front, but it takes a lot of staff time, staff resources. So we're trying to analyze what the cost is associated with that, as well as taking a look at what the demand has been and what the usage has been over the last several months in a situation where people would absolutely use that circumstance. So we figured that would be the highest use that we would ever see. So we'll bring back a report to you and let you know kind of what our findings are in that regard. I would like to make sure that everybody is aware that these meetings are accessible from a viewing and to watch what's going on both online and through SGTV. So anybody who wants to watch and understand and see what the board is doing, they've always had that option to do that remotely. So just want to make sure that for folks that aren't aware of that, that option has been available and continues to be available.
Ms. Adams, if I could just ask a question here. would there be a labor-intense difference if it was just, you've got the TV, you know, it's online, if they could call in with comments as opposed to just do the Zoom?
We can look at that, but it would still require a dedicated staff person and some other coordination, but we can look at that.
Yeah, I'm just saying as an alternative, as a,
And a chairman to be reminded all the time, check the phone line.
Multiple phone lines.
I just like.
Just saying.
Hey, if that happened, whoever the staff person was, let's just call him Clint, I would just say, do what the other commissioners do and just, hey, Lee, you got somebody? Okay. Miss Adams, thank you for your patience.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, I appreciate the, for the record, my name is Kaylee Adams, that's CALIADAMS. I live at 1011 Mockingbird Lane in Geneva. I drove up here with my kids, so I figured, I appreciate your statement saying that you're looking into it, but I figured I'd still use my time. I'm a homeschooling mom because of the pandemic, actually, because I was concerned about how school board would consider the pandemic. So I've been homeschooling my children for the last year and a half. And with the tools that we have had online and through technology, it's been amazing being able to make it work, so students and teachers can make Zoom an option for them to make it daily. I think that we can continue to have it working here for us. I've used the calling in option. I've used the watching the live feed, but not being able to make my voice heard there. I appreciate Zoom because I'm able to easily put in my time, although there was one instance where there was a technical formality, but I think Chairman Constantine saw it and had me scooted in at the last minute to still make my comment, so I appreciate it. The accessibility issue is pretty important to me. Because I live in Geneva, so driving up here down a dirt road and packing up my kids, they're not usually this well behaved. They're actually really, really heeding my warning that they should be very good for me. So I'm grateful and also grateful to their tablets and my phone to be able to help me out with that because, babysitters don't always come in human form. But for a short amount of time to do this, I felt that it was needed to be able to come up here and make it a point that parents do appreciate having the virtual option, so please continue to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. And you left Miss Haller back there to take care of them while you were over.
She offered.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Humphreys.
For the record, Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. Again, for the most part, I appreciate and accept all the information as far as notification. There's one minor glitch or issue that I think that we need to think about. During the mobility fee conversations, staff and consultants did a great job of subdividing the county into its various components as far as rural areas, urban core areas. Well, I know we've had this conversation about what's rural and what's not. I live in the Wekiva Protection Area, which by state statute is meant to be maintained as a rural area. And there's also language in the county comp plan and stuff. The rural words matter. It matters, obviously, when you're talking about legislation, ordinances, and statutes as well. So I'm just a little concerned about the fact that notification falls into 2 categories as opposed to 3 categories, which there was a lot of discussion about, again, during the impact fees. Now, obviously, I don't live on 30 acres on a dirt road in Geneva, but I know some people on my side of the county that are pretty close to that. So I just think we need to have a conversation about the notification, because we just need to consider the fact that the image that I showed you earlier is not downtown Orlando. I live here because I don't want to be in downtown Orlando. And the fact that there's a McDonald's 10 minutes, 12 minutes away, I consider to be a negative, and I think is a public health hazard, so I'd like the commission to consider having that removed. So other than that,
We're not endorsing that statement, by the way.
So, and I also support longleaf pines. There.
Right on.
Right. Less palms, more pines. So, but anyway, that's just, as far as notifications are concerned, like I said, we're a little unique over on our section, and we're starting to feel a little unloved because everybody talks about the rural boundary. Well, the original rural boundary in my world was the Wekiva. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Humphreys. Is there anyone else that wishes to say yes? Ms. Barker?
Hello again. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Linda Barker, 3405 South Mellonville Avenue, Sanford, Florida. Well, we've entered a new world, and I think that the Zoom is very appropriate. Our whole lifestyle has changed. And I'm assuming that chat is also something that's for people to input during the Zoom. Is that correct?
That was not enabled.
Not chat, well, anyhow. As much accessibility, especially since most of these meetings are during the day, I think would have excellent perception and response from the community. Okay, on the land development, the notification of 500 feet, one thing that I experienced myself is I think that we would be very prudent to include people who own on a body of water, such as a lake, because something that is 1,000 feet across the lake on the other road connects a boundary to my backyard. So when we had a development proposed on our lake, someone was wise enough not to limit to the 500 people linear down the road, but to include the rest of this. And that's something that is an anomaly and people don't consider, but I think that that is very, very important because when you're on a lake, you all share the same backyard, because most of us own into the center of the lake. Does that make sense? So maybe, Dagmar, we can work that in, possibly. That was a suggestion. And the other thing is I'm not sure, I have asked before in the past if it were possible to get email notification like we do from other cities when there are commission meetings or like the Sanford Airport Authority meeting. If that is possible to get email notification of upcoming BCC meetings, that would be great. That would just be my suggestion. If we're not doing it, would that be possible? Thank you very much for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lockhart?
County Manager, I know, email lists are not easy to maintain and keep up to date, and so I understand how easy it is and why someone would say, please send me an email notification because I want to be notified when you're having a meeting. I get that, but I'm not sure that that's, I'm going to be the bad guy, I'm not sure that's a reasonable request for our staff to maintain, just because people change email addresses, some people want it, some people don't, and then I just, the school board does maintain what they call the GITS list, and it's sent out to all of the local municipalities and governmental entities, and so when they have notifications of policy change, it does go out to their list. So if the majority of the board is interested in asking you to do something like that, I would suggest looking at how the school board manages it. But I know that it is a big job for one individual to maintain that list. So not saying I'm opposed to you doing it, I just don't want you to think that by nodding my head that I'm saying I expect it.
So our plan right now is to initiate, and some of these things we've actually already started doing, will operate under the guidelines that you're about to adopt. If the board wants us to do additional things, we'll look at them. I will tell you, these are somewhat labor intensive, so there are staffing, there will be staffing concerns and staffing issues that we would have to deal with if we start to ramp things up.
So right now we advertise on Nextdoor, Facebook, on the website, in the paper?
Paper, on some things in the paper.
On some things. Or can anyone tell us what other, are those the four
I think
means?
those are the four, yes, I'm
Four.
getting them out from
So,
communications.
Nextdoor app, Facebook, paper, website.
Website, do we do Twitter? Because I don't do Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think we tweet about meeting notifications.
No. Okay.
Yeah, certain things. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Zimbauer, then Commissioner Herr.
Thank you. So we all know, and we've talked about the technology interaction for our citizens on our website has been troubling. We've agreed to fund that, fund some enhancements with that. But here's what I got to say. I hear people talk about transparency behind closed doors. So my first question is, how did y'all know about today's meeting? How did you get here? I've been doing this for 30 years in the audience like you all, before I ever arrived here, before they had Nextdoor and all these other things. And I got to tell you, every time there's some kind of something that comes up, they all seem to find their way here. So my question becomes is, if we're doing Nextdoor, we're doing whatever other social medias and Facebook and the county website and reach outs, I don't know how people get here. And I don't know who's doing things behind closed doors and without transparency. I don't even know what that means. I mean, this meeting has been a meeting that's always been open to the public. We let the public come, we let the public speak. It's advertised in many different medias. But this disingenuous claim that things are done behind closed doors without notice and without some way of knowing what's going on, even before we agreed to change the notification length and outreach, people still made it here. So we have SGTV, it's aired. You can go online and get SGTV if you don't have Bright House. You can come to the meetings here. You have the elderly who, when we had night meetings years ago, they complained it wasn't safe to drive and they'd be getting home at 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning. You have staff that's up to 1, 2, 3 in the morning. The reality is this government is about as open as you can get, in my opinion. Can we interact with the public better? Sure, as far as our website and that. But as far as notification, transparency, I don't buy it. Not for a second.
Commissioner Herr.
Just so I didn't get forgotten, that was a little more aggressive than my normal take.
I'd already called.
It's not mutually exclusive that we are wildly open and transparent, and we could make it easier. So I would just add that when we do the website update, that included in that RFP, we ask for the technological capability to have a self-maintained email list where you can submit email addresses and you can change your email address, and then it is on you all to keep it up to date, and all we're doing is maintaining the system. We do not need people touching emails, but we should be striving in everything we do to make it as easy as possible for the public to engage.
Her again for the win.
Yoo-hoo. Good
Can I
idea.
call, did we have a motion? Can I call the question?
Yes, we have a motion, and we have, I wanted to make sure there's
Call the
anyone
question.
else. And without further debate, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. And I would like to thank the staff once again. This notification it was an issue that was concerning to all of us. We have now improved it. And one thing I did also want to say is, especially when we talked about the lake, we do still have flexibility when we see things that we need to add to those folks to do that also. And I just wanted to put that in there. And then with that, we are now on number 25. County Manager's Report. County Manager, and you've got
We already did
two.
25.
We already did 25.
I'm sorry? I mean, we did 25, but
Right.
now I'm talking about your other County Manager Report,
All right.
ARPA discussion.
Could I get,
25 we already did.
Brandon, could I
It's all right.
get the clicker?
Mike, you do know that we have already
Here for-
approved what you want, what you're here for.
So you're going
Okay.
to number 3 on the agenda now, back up
Yeah,
to
we're going
Arbor?
We are
We're going up
back
to number
on
3.
the American Rescue Plan Act, which we had already indicated that the county
be on
manager said that she wanted to do during her report.
Perfect.
Okay. This is a lot of stuff, so I'll move through the things quickly that we can move through quickly.
Take your time.
So the preliminaries I will move through quickly because a lot of this you've already seen. I just wanted to give you a complete packet. But as you're all aware, in March, President Biden signed into law the American Rescue Plan Act, which included a lot of money, $120 billion of which was directed to local governments, split halfway between cities and counties. Of that money, let me back up. There were 4. Although the act is this big, there were 4 uses identified for the state and local government recovery funds. Number 1, to respond to the public health emergency and the negative economic impacts, to address the reductions in revenues for local governments. There were some infrastructure provisions in there for water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And then also to respond to essential workers who to provide some opportunities for premium pay for essential workers. And we're not really going to focus on number 4 because, at least internally, we have policies for disaster pay, and so folks who were directly assigned to address the crisis were, and who were working in that realm, were provided disaster pay under the board's existing policy. So of the money that was allocated to local government, Seminole County's allocation was $91.6 million. Unlike the CARES Act, wherein all of the money came to the county for use countywide, under the rescue plan, municipalities are receiving their own pots of money. These numbers, for the most part, are estimates. Sanford is the only city that has received money so far, and they received it directly from the federal government because they're an entitlement city under the CDBG program. The remaining cities will receive their funds through the state. They don't know when they're going to get them through the state. They have not been advised of that. The state has the money. Under the act, the state is not allowed to put any strings on the money, so I think there is some confusion as to why maybe it's taking so long. They're to get it in two separate buckets, just as we were. Additionally, the Seminole County Public Schools is receiving $89 million out of the recovery, out of the rescue plan. And they received $39 million from the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which was approved in December. We didn't receive anything out of that act except for the rental assistance program. The school board did, with the CARES Act, they only received $9 million. So I just wanted you to know that they did get a significant allotment under the rescue plan. And so if you add up everything that the county is getting and the cities are getting and the school board is getting, the Seminole County community is receiving almost $270 million in rescue plan dollars. As I indicated, we are to get the money in two buckets. We've received the first allotment, which is 50% at $46 million. And then the second disbursement we are expecting to get a year from now. We're holding our breath just a little bit because we are a little concerned until we get it, what might happen to it. There had been some discussion, although it has waned, on using the second tranche of money that going to local governments and rolling that into the infrastructure bill. We think that discussion has stopped, although we're continuing to monitor that. The covered period under the rescue plan, under the recovery funds in the rescue plan, begins March 3rd of 2021, which means that we can cover costs incurred under any of the categories from that date forward. The deadline to obligate or incur is December 31st of 2024, and we talked about that when we first discussed the rescue plan. In the new guidance, they have clarified that we have until December 31st to spend, of 26 to spend, although the cost has to be incurred by the 24th. So, and that was really to address capital projects that have a longer term so that you've committed the funds, but you might not be done. So it gave us a couple of extra years on that. So Treasury guidance, one of the things we were waiting on, the legislation was passed in March. It wasn't until May that we got the first set of guidance from Treasury on this. And this first set of guidance was a 135-page interim final, I don't know how you have interim final, but an interim final rule, pretty significant, and we've been slogging through that on a staff level. They followed up in June with a compliance and reporting document, which is actually even scarier than the 135-page interim rule. They have comments open on the interim rule until the end, I think it's the end of this week, so that may change as well. So there's probably more to come. So the interim rule, as we would expect, tracks the legislation. It broke the 4 funding categories into 5 funding categories. They split the first one, the public health response and the negative economic impact, into 2 different categories. The others remain the same, and I just point that out to you because I think we're going to start, we had categories for CARES Act, but we're going to start talking about these categories as we move forward, so I just want you to be familiar with them. So key points from the interim rule. A lot of emphasis on addressing disproportionately impacted neighborhoods and communities. Lot of discussion on that, and really a lot more latitude on projects that will occur in qualified census tract areas, which is how they define these disproportionately impacted communities. Get a little more latitude there than we do maybe with projects in other places. We mentioned that the opportunity to recoup lost revenue, that is, the uses under that category are much more flexible than any other category in the Act. And that is a distinction from the CARES Act. As you know, we were not able to do that under the CARES Act. The funds may not be used for any non-federal match unless specifically authorized. And this is important for us because some of the infrastructure projects that we might be talking about, we can't use this to supplement funding that we might get. So that's something that we're going to have to navigate. And some of the state grant programs actually are pass-throughs for federal dollars. So that's something that we're going to have to remain mindful of as we move through. And then while local governments can use the ARPA funds to specifically invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, general economic development and other infrastructure projects are not permitted under ARPA, except in some circumstances where you kind of move the deck chairs around. But those are all things that we really need to keep in mind as we select projects for the use of these dollars. Key points from the compliance and reporting document, which I mentioned was a scarier document. A lot of emphasis on transparency, a lot of emphasis on if you screw up and spend the money wrong, you're going to have to pay us back. So we have to put a lot of policies and procedures together, which Lori's group is already working on, as to how we're going to administer the money, how we will administer the money to subrecipients, how we will keep track of all of the expenditures, because we have to report back regularly on expenditures. Again, just more and more discussion about stressing oversight of subrecipients and really, they really hammer home, we got our eyes on you. So in addition to the compliance issues, there are reporting requirements, and we are required to submit the first report August 31st, although we've not spent any of the money. It is a one-time interim report. I think they just want to make sure that we're working on this and getting our act together. And then we have project and expenditure reports that are required quarterly, and we have to report on any expenditure or any grant or contract that is over $50,000. So we'll have to continue to report on those on a regular basis. And then the most significant item, report that we have to do it, and the cities have to do it because it's population-based, is a recovery plan performance report, which is a plan on how we're going to spend the money. And it's pretty significant, and it is due at the end of August. So we have talked to other counties about what they're doing with this plan, and the only one that we found that really has a fully developed plan so far is Leon County. They did it in May, and in reading it, they may have to go back and revise some things because it's not completely consistent with the guidance, some of their spending categories. So the recovery plan includes at a minimum, these 5 elements: an executive summary, a description on how we're going to use the funds. We have to describe how we're going to promote equitable outcomes with the $91 million. We also have to describe how we will address community engagement with respect to the expenditures of the funds, and then labor practices with respect to any infrastructure projects that are proposed. We can refine the plan over time, but we need to put all of this information together before the end of August. So one of the things that we've sort of been hedging on with respect to the ARPA dollars is what's going to happen with the infrastructure legislation, because we have some infrastructure projects on the list of potential ARPA spends. So we know now we can't wait to see what's going to happen with the infrastructure bill. As most of you are probably aware, there was a bipartisan agreement for infrastructure spending. It's got a $1.2 trillion price tag on it, heavy on transportation, also other infrastructure, including water projects, which would be of interest to us. Broadband is also included in there. The Senate has indicated that it will work through what would normally be an August recess to try to get this legislation passed. The House has said they won't even consider it until the Senate works through it. So ARPA is not the only thing that we're dealing with respect to continuing to administer COVID-related assistance programs. You're all aware of the rental assistance program. We got $14.2 million as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act in December, and we are separate from the local government funds, receiving $11.2 million under the rescue plan. This is an income qualified program, as you're aware. It only addresses rental needs, rental assistance for households that are at or below 80% of the AMI in the county. And that, for a family of four, is about a little over $60,000 a year. So there's a lot of folks that won't qualify for this program. The deadline for expenditure on Phase 1 is September of '22. However, under the original, that's a revised date. It was originally December of this year, and we were required to have funds obligated by the end of September of this year. While we have the spending deadline has been extended, Treasury still has the right to come back in and get any money that we haven't allocated by September 30th. So we're really working hard to get this money committed in the community so that it's not up for grabs. And then the 11.2 that we are receiving under the rescue plan, we have until not 90, it should be 09 of 30 of 25 to spend this money. With respect to the Phase 1 of the program, we have approved $8 million of the $14 million. We have an approval rate of about 55%, and we've been able to disperse funds to over 1,200 families. The other program that I want to talk to you about is a brand new program that we launched yesterday. And this is a mortgage assistance program. The rental assistance program is limited to rental assistance and utilities. We had another bucket of money that we got related to COVID through the CDBG program, and we've committed $1.6 million of this bucket of money, the entire bucket of money, and separate from administrative fees, to address mortgage assistance. And this is also an income qualified program. So again, it's limited to households that are at 80% or less of the AMI. The portal opened yesterday. We have, as of a couple of hours ago, 180 some odd applications already. We anticipate that we'll be able to assist about 300 households just based on our experience with the rental assistance program. And we're going to keep the portal open until we have 500 applications, just kind of based on what our approval has been. This is a countywide, this and the rental assistance programs are available countywide, including in the municipalities, because they're not associated with our ARPA dollars. So anyone can access these if they meet the criteria. I won't go through all of the criteria, but basically you have to own a home. You have to demonstrate that you have had a hardship. You can't have the property for sale. And your household income, as I said, has to be below 80% of the AMI, but you also have to have monthly income that is at least equivalent to your mortgage payment. So you have to be employed, you have to have some kind of income coming in.
You have to stand on one foot.
Yes.
And rub your belly.
Yep, exactly.
And, yeah.
Exactly.
And your head. Pat your head.
And they have to, the mortgage has to have been current before March of 2020 as well. So they have to have gotten behind because of COVID. So one of the things that has been important to the board is coordinating resources with municipalities under the rescue plan. Because we are getting our separate pots of money, we want to make sure that we're leveraging them in the best way possible. And we've met several times. I've met with the county manager several times. And we started initially just talking about individual and small business assistance because it didn't make any sense to us to have 8 different direct assistance programs running through the county. So I think that there is a great deal of interest in the cities in coordinating with us, not only on those 2 areas, but several others. We identified that there are opportunities that the community would be better off if we leveraged our dollars. So with respect to direct assistance, that's direct assistance to individuals, there is an interest to participate in a program that would go beyond the 80% AMI, that would provide housing assistance, both mortgage and rental assistance, for folks that don't qualify under the existing programs. And under that scenario, the county would fund residents in unincorporated Orange County, and we've classified these expenditures as optional discretionary participation items, where the cities would decide how much money do you want to put towards that. We would administer the program for an administration. We'd include an administration fee because it's costing us something to do that. And then we would just fund however many we had, whatever they wanted to contribute. So if they wanted to contribute enough to fund 50 households, we'd go to 50 households, and then City A would no longer have those individuals would not be eligible anymore. Same concept with the small business assistance program. However, on that, and I think I have some information later in the slides on this, we have about $3 million of Seminole CARES dollars left. So my suggestion on that is that we take $2 million of that and we put it into small business assistance, and we just use that countywide because those CARES dollars were intended to be used countywide. Keep $1 million aside for COVID response because we're still working on that. But put $2 million into that and start that small business assistance across the county without direct participation from the cities. Once that money is depleted, then if cities or the county wanted to continue doing small business assistance, we would just put in whatever, and I have an allotment in the proposed spending, however much we wanted to contribute, and it would be whatever the jurisdiction was funding. We would administer the program, but we would fund until those dollars were gone. We have a category of special economic incentives, which is really just workforce training. Actually, 2 things in there now. Workforce training, and we talked yesterday also about technical assistance for small businesses. So you'll see that I think I have $1 million proposed for workforce training and $500,000 proposed for small business assistance. And those would both be through Seminole State College, and we've gotten proposals for both of those. The Seminole State College, the proposal for the small business technical assistance has discrete services that you could actually quantify by businesses. The workforce training is a little more nebulous. So we talked on these 2 about the cities participating kind of at an optional discretionary level on the small business technical assistance. They could pick how many businesses they wanted to assist. But then on the workforce training, we would do a pro rata sort of participation. So for those who wanted to participate, we would do it on a population basis, so we're not having to track that. They're also interested in participating in the mental health initiatives, both what the Sheriff's Office has proposed to do as well as partnerships. That, again, would be a category that we would do basically on a pro rata basis as opposed, because it's just hard to parse that out as well. Nonprofit assistance, the same thing. nonprofit really is sticky because you've got nonprofits that serve all over the county. So having the county administer that, and they would participate in a pro rata basis, so they won't have to deal with requests. It's really very attractive to them in that respect.
Very clean, yeah.
And then same with homelessness diversion. That, though, would be actually on a discretionary basis because not everybody's gung-ho about that. So we'll take whatever they're willing to give.
Not everybody's convinced that they have homelessness?
Yes, exactly.
Got
So, but we are certainly willing to take whatever they're willing to contribute to that.
Or drive by on the street corner, you
Yeah.
see them on the corner.
So this is the original, I don't expect you to read this, I just threw it in your packet. This is what we originally talked about last time we talked about potential spending expenditures under ARPA. So now I want to roll into kind of each of those and talk to you about them. What we didn't talk about last time was revenue replacement. And as I said earlier, this is the kind of what we can spend revenue replacement dollars on is more flexible than anything else in the Act. There is a formula as to calculate how much revenue replacement we're eligible for. We talked about this at the last budget work session. We're eligible to convert $48.5 million of the $91.6 million to revenue replacement. This board made a decision at the last work session that it felt comfortable using 30% of the overall ARPA dollars, which would be $27.5 million, for budget stabilization over the next several years. So I've got that programmed in that way. My recommendation, though, would be that we convert as much as we can because we don't know what we can always use it for stuff on the list, but we may need it for something that's not allowable under the Act.
But we gave you that flexibility.
You gave us that flexibility. I just want to make sure
Trying to be
we
clear.
calculated that in here. But any government, and we can use the revenue replacement dollars for any government service. Can't use it for debt and can't use it for rainy day funds. And you can't use it for legal settlements and other things like that. But
And we're going to have 2 more discussions or work sessions on this topic.
We do. Today is to kind of just give you an update on where we are and what we've learned so far. We have another work session and then a meeting for formal approval in August.
So we're not making decisions to distribute funds today.
No, but you are telling me whether or not we're on the right track today. I hope you're telling me that. So I'm going to roll into the discussion of some of the items that were on the list last time we talked. And broadband was a priority for everybody on the board. You all, when I talked to you individually, you all indicated a concern to make sure that everybody had access to high-speed internet. We've gotten a little more information about what the ARPA dollars can be used for. You had 2 categories. You had actual infrastructure to fill the gaps. And then you also talked about providing, underwriting the cost of high-speed internet service to neighborhoods or communities that may have challenges there. So what we have discovered and what we know so far about ARPA is it is focused on, the broadband provisions are focused on providing service to unserved or underserved households. So I gave you the definition here. And unserved or underserved households are households that are not currently served by a wireline connection that delivers internet at a certain speed. So what that means to me is that communities that do have wireline service and who are able to get service at that speed are not unserved or underserved. So they're not the target of the broadband infrastructure dollars in this Act. Communities that need assistance with the payment for broadband services, if they are in these targeted census tract communities, we could provide that as individual assistance. So they're not out of, and this is kind of a summary. I'm not keeping up with my slides. So what you talked about before was broadband expansion to unserved areas, East rural area. There are other gaps we know throughout the county, and then underwriting service delivery, and we had examples of Midway and the Goldsboro area. So based on what we know, we are suggesting that we focus on what we can do under the infrastructure portion, which is fill the gaps and provide service to areas that don't have service. But that we also allow, under the individual assistance, the underwriting of costs for internet service as an eligible direct assistance item. in addition to utilities and mortgage or rental assistance. If they can demonstrate that they have a need, and if they can also demonstrate that they're not eligible for any of the other programs out there, because there are a number of programs that provide assistance. So,
Question.
Sure.
This is for ARPA funds, correct?
this is for ARPA funds.
That's not for the broadband funds for infrastructure.
That's different from the
Different.
infrastructure,
I
yeah. And
want to be clear.
Yes, this is just ARPA. We don't have any details on what, we know that there's 65
I understand that,
billion. Okay.
Nicole, I just want to be
Yeah.
clear.
Yes, correct. So there is, I have noted that there is potential under the Infrastructure Act, and then also there is money in the Rescue Act for Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. That's one of the programs that folks who need help underwriting the cost of service, they may be able to access those dollars. So we're looking into that as part of our direct assistance program. So here's, I'm going to give you a recommendation at the end of each of these sections. So I think the first thing we need to do is figure out where we don't have service. I think a lot of you have heard where people don't have service. And to determine what the community need is from an infrastructure standpoint. And then set aside some portion, I've proposed some portion to be set aside for broadband infrastructure construction, knowing that there may be a lot more money available through the Infrastructure/Jobs Act. And then also include internet service payment assistance through the direct assistance programs, as I discussed earlier. And my suggested, and I say temporary only on this allocation, is $10 million until we really know what we might, number one, what we need through the consultant, and then also what might be available through the Infrastructure Act. This is something that I would really, the consultant is something I'd really like to get going pretty quickly, because if we are going to do infrastructure, we need to have the time to do it. This is also something, and it wasn't on my list, it came out of the meeting yesterday with the managers. I think the cities would like to throw in on the cost of this study because they're interested in finding out what's going on in their jurisdictions as well, and may also invest in broadband.
So if you're talking about broadband, are you talking about fixed or mobile? Because those are two separate.
It doesn't distinguish.
But we should.
As far as we can tell, it doesn't distinguish in the Act. What it does distinguish is if you have a wireline connection and you can hit a certain speed, you're not under or unserved.
I understand that, but we should be defining if it's mobile or fixed, because that's two separate services.
I would agree with you, and I would hope, my expectation would be the consultant would identify what our needs are, how we might be able to address them, best address them.
Okay?
Commissioner Lockhart?
So on the direct assistance for monthly fees, just like with the direct assistance for rent or utilities, is there any way that we are determining for sure that that is what that money is going to ultimately?
Just like with utilities, we would pay it directly to the service provider.
It would be. So it would be direct to the service provider, not direct to the citizen.
Right. All of our
Okay.
direct assistance programs for individuals, we pay either the mortgage holder, the landlord,
Got it.
utility, all of that.
Fabulous.
The only thing that we gave directly under CARES, we had some food cards that we gave.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner?
I'm going to keep on going back to this. I think we should be paying for fixed, not mobile.
And that may be where you mean fixed for the
Fixed point service instead of mobile service.
Are you talking about from an infrastructure standpoint or from an assistance standpoint? For somebody's got internet service now, they need help paying for it.
That's correct. But I
Okay.
mean, you're paying for fixed service, not mobile.
In somebody's home, I agree, you're not talking about paying for their cell phone.
That's correct.
I'm with you, we're with you on that.
But that's not what you said yet.
Okay.
You just said it now, but you haven't been saying that.
Okay, that was it would
I
be
didn't read your
it would
mind
be a
yet.
service associated with the household, so.
I thought she was talking about the infrastructure that we would put in.
That's what I thought
would be
also.
fixed
Yeah.
or mobile based
And
on.
the
That's what I
consultant
thought, well, and that's what I thought he was talking about as well, too.
That's why I
So,
wanted
yeah.
more
Okay.
Okay, good,
definition.
okay, thank you for
So does
clarifying.
everybody understand what she's talking about now?
Yes.
It's fixed,
Okay.
not mobile.
Fixed on the direct assistance. We don't know if we're going to do Wi-Fi or
Yeah, we're not gonna pay
wired
for their cell phone.
For the infrastructure. Got it, we're not paying for cell phones. Yeah, we're not paying for cell phones, that's clear.
Commissioner?
I think if there's an area where you can't get fixed and there's no other capability, you have a problem.
That is a point.
So you don't have to pay for a cell phone, but there is a mobile
Like a MiFi,
hotspot
yeah.
that doesn't make a phone call, but does create an internet connection that puts a kid in school.
I'm going to tell you honestly, I don't think that we're going to have that much assistance going out for that because there are other programs that will cover that. So I think it would really be sort of a one-off if we were in a position to do that. So the next, any other questions on broadband?
And these are broad recommendations right now.
These are just, this is the direction we're heading. So if we need to recalibrate, please tell me.
We don't even know how much potentially we would even give to that particular program.
Right now, right now.
To the assistance program, not to the
Not to the
broadband.
assistance. The assistance program, I think, would be nominal. It's not something that I
That's
think
what I'm
we
talking
really
about.
even need to talk about. The next category that we talked about last time we talked about ARPA was economic recovery assistance. And this included business recruitment and expansion incentives, tourism support incentives, it's kind of typical economic development incentives. So based on what we have read in the interim rule, and we talk a lot about small business, but a lot about responding to COVID, if businesses have specific issues related to COVID, but it appears that the general business recruitment and expansion initiatives would not be an eligible expenditure under ARPA, the regular ARPA. And then the expansion or upgrade of tourism facilities are eligible, but if you're talking about actual capital development, it needs to be something that was planned pre-COVID and that was delayed because of COVID. So those are things that colored the recommendation that we're going to make. The other consideration is there's $2.8 billion in grants specifically geared towards restaurants and bars included in the Rescue Act that's separate from the local government money. So based on that, staff is recommending that from the previous list, we eliminate the ineligible business recruitment and expansion expenditures. We eliminate the ineligible tourism facility construction. We'll go back. We had a great idea for soccer fields at Yankee Lake, but that wasn't on the table before COVID, and it wasn't delayed because of COVID. So I don't think it's an eligible expense under tourism. I'll go back to this. We revised the proposed support for hospitality to specifically relate to lodging institutions because there is separate assistance for restaurants and bars within the the Rescue Act. And then we're recommending that we reduce. Originally, there was a proposal to do $2 to $5 million for an airline recruitment. The airport had requested something. I think you all received a copy of that. We proposed reducing that to $1 million simply because there's just a limit on funds. And then what wasn't in there was the workforce development that I talked to you about. I have $1 million in here. We have a proposal from Seminole State. We haven't screwed down the numbers on it yet, so I have $1 million in here as a placeholder for that. Under CARES, we spent about a little under $500,000 on that. So before I move off of these topics, any questions or comments?
Questions?
Well, just a question about lodging versus restaurant. Did the restaurants get assistance during? I'm trying to figure out.
So the
why
restaurants
one and not the
they
other.
would be eligible. I'm going to get to the small business assistance in a minute,
okay.
but they would be eligible under small business as well. But there was also a separate pot of money for restaurants and bars in the overall Recovery Act. So they have access to another pot of money that we don't have access to. But they also would be eligible under the Small Business Assistance Program as well. They're not excluded from that. We just had a category.
Right. What I'm understanding is that the loopholes to be a restaurant that meets the criteria to be eligible for the federal program leaves some things to be desired. And I mean, for me, what I'm hearing, talking to a lot of folks in the restaurant industry, is that their issue is incentivizing staff to come to work.
So they could do that. They could do that
Yeah.
under the small business. They would be eligible to do
so
that.
So they could definitely qualify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure they're not getting totally cut out.
No, they're not. They're eligible under that program.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
Yes, thank you. On this workforce development under the CARES, when we did the workforce development, have we tracked those that went through that program or received funding for that program?
I don't know
what the-
level of metric we've gotten back from the college, but we can certainly ask them.
I'd like to know what benefit came out of that funding.
If they were able to get jobs.
So if we found a new career, or they're continuing their education, whatever the case might be.
Sure.
So we have something we can quantify.
Absolutely. I think that's really, that would be great.
And to my good friend Commissioner Lockhart's point on the interaction with the restaurants. So, in digressing back a few slides, which you don't need to go back, rental and mortgage assistance, individual assistance, business assistance. The business community's biggest issue right now is getting people off the couch and back to work. So I'm somewhat curious from individual assistance, mortgage assistance, and rental assistance, if we can quantify what is the status of these individuals that need this? In other words, were they unemployed pre-COVID or become unemployed during COVID? And is their job eligible? And are we able to contact their employer and just simply say, hey, is Bob's job open, or was it offered to them, or whatever the case might be? Sorry, Bob.
Bob job.
Bad choice of... And so my concern is, I mean, I think all of us up here have a similar core value concern about this money overall. You know, I think all of us, when it originally happened, we all said, we'll send it back, and then we found out, well, if we send it back, it's not going to do anything except get spent somewhere else. So we're sort of forced to spend it here. So the strings are attached, but I guess at the end of the day, I'm not looking to extend, quote, the new norm. It's time to get back to normal. Out of COVID land. I understand we still have COVID going on, but getting back to a more reasonable, rational operating practice that we were accustomed to. And I think spending this money, we need to make sure we're not prolonging the inevitable for some of these people, that is, we're just leading them along when in fact they could just get off their couch and go to work. So if there's a way to quantify that or qualify that, and then finally, what's the cost, if we know, to administer this program and track and do all the auditing that we're going to have to do for every dollar we send out, to be able to then follow that and then report back? Do we have any idea? Is that a 10% of this money?
On some of it we do.
2% of that money?
On some of it we do, because of course we're contracting with Ernst & Young. We have some outside contractors, and internally we can track that as well. Administrative costs are eligible for reimbursement under the Act, so we can capture that, and we are capturing it in the direct assistance programs with our vendors.
And I understand, but I don't see that outlined in this presentation. In other words, how much of the money is going to be spent in managing the programs?
So and I can't tell you that for everything. I can tell you that it's baked into the numbers for the direct assistance, because we're paying out of those dollars, we're paying for the administrative costs out of the direct assistance end of it. That's part of that money is going to the administrative costs. For instance, the $14 million that we got on emergency rental assistance, only 12 and change is really eligible direct, because part of it is administrative costs. So we are trying to track that. We have not gotten down into those kind of details with every other category, but we do know what it is for those, because we did them through CARES, so we know kind of what those costs are. And the overall number that we would give you is included in that.
It sounds like we're going to have a lot of oversight.
Yep.
Which means a lot of time,
Yep.
which means a lot of cost.
Yep.
So I think we should identify that as well. Maybe for
I think that's great. I think that's great. And
follow-up
we'll
meetings.
try to quantify that for the next work session, so you have an understanding.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
So I think there's two different administrative numbers that we should count on. The ones that you bake in are great, they're already baked in, but the secondary one is staff time. And build it in or don't build it in, but we at least need to understand what that is. We also need to potentially reconsider our expectations around what the next year looks like, depending on how many people you have to pull out to do this. So let's just acknowledge that fact.
And I'll get with Lori about, because really most of the monitoring is going to fall on her. The most significant, the most staff-intensive processes are the direct assistants, because we have to go through all of these individual. Nonprofit took a lot of our time last time too, even though there weren't a whole lot of them. It was a lot of review. So we'll try to quantify that before we have the next work session and give you guys an idea of what we're looking at there, and I think it's actually a good thing for the community to know too.
So I wasn't done. I would not
sorry.
underestimate it, and I would make sure it's disclosed. And then I'm on slide 27 with regard to your comment, Commissioner Z. What jumped off the page at me on that slide is the relationship of individual assistance to small business assistance. So individual is at 5 million, and small business is at 1.5.
It's really at 3.5, because I've got 2 million of CARES that I want to roll into that.
Still.
Yeah.
So the fact that the more we hand it to the businesses to incent people to get back to work, that's different from us handing cash out. That changes the economy in a different and more positive way. That being said, they're not mutually exclusive. Somebody could be back to work now and have fallen behind on their mortgage through the shutdown, and we still need to address that, because they may never be able to dig out of that.
And
so that does matter.
And that is where most of the money is going in both of these. The rental assistance, we can only go prospective 3 months. The mortgage assistant is prospective 1 month. So it's really more to correct arrears than it is to say you don't have to go to work, but it is so we don't have foreclosures and evictions and those kind of things is really what it's intended to. So they're excellent points, and I should have clarified that.
I was just I'm sorry, just to follow up, just clarify, what I wanted to try to make sure of on Commissioner Herr's point is that we're verifying that the reason they're behind is because their job was eliminated and they were not able to go to work.
What we're verifying is they were impacted by COVID, so.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lockhart.
Yeah, I've had a couple of different, this isn't my question or comment, but in response to that, I've had a couple of different folks reach out to me directly, and in talking with our team at Community Assistance, it seems like they have a very in-depth plan, process in place that really makes sure that what people are saying they're saying is true. And, not to say that there are people who would lie to get money, but
God, no.
From my interactions and the folks that have reached out to me, I feel comfortable with the process they have in place. Doesn't mean that there aren't some folks who might slip through the cracks and, do a one-over on us, but
Sure.
It seems to be pretty detailed, so.
And I think the 55% approval rate, so 45% of them are getting
Right.
kicked back,
Yeah.
is a good indication of that as well. That they're
Yeah, no, I agree. The ones that concern me are the self-employed. Those are the ones that are easy to
And so I
Isn't that
think
you?
system.
the-
That's me.
The teacher, isn't that you?
Yeah, but I don't need it, so I'm good.
I think the
Apparently
teach a
I do. They
man-
send me an unemployment check.
The teach a
Okay.
man to fish concept is what I'm hoping we're actually going for here. And if there are people in our community who are no longer wanting to work jobs that pay $8, $10, $12 an hour, I understand that. How can we incent them to participate in a Skill Up program where we can get them either in a fire academy, right? We have needs. How do we get them to be excited about working for Seminole County government? How do we get them maybe interested in driving a school bus? There are so many jobs that are even in the public service sector that if our private businesses, and I don't want to compete with private business for employees, but we kind of are.
Right.
I just feel like some of what we're doing here needs to be helping our community realize not only is there value in work in and of itself, but showing them that there is another path for work that they might not have known was available to them because they didn't realize they could acquire the skills for free. I mean, we're giving away knowledge and skills, and we need people to know that they can access that. So however we can somehow work that into this, I think would be fantastic.
I think that's a great point, and I will tell you, and I didn't really explain much on the workforce development, what we're trying to do. We went to the college and said, what do you think? And they want to focus on construction trades because that's what's so hot now, and some more rapid credentialing on that. And then also, we've talked to them about doing a public service academy. For positions we need, heavy equipment operators, things like that. The cities were very interested in that as well. So I think we have a really great opportunity, but connecting it to the individual assistance program, I think, is a great idea.
I don't know if we can do that. That was, I mean, can we say to someone, are we allowed by law with this program, can we say, hey, we absolutely want to give you the assistance, and we also want to provide you with a strong suggestion, this skill up opportunity?
Well, and I've said to Nicole a few times while she's doing her presentation that this is a wide open area, and talk about staff time. I have an attorney who's basically working on this close to 40 hours a week since this all started a long time ago. And that's not counting my time with it. There is a lot more guidance that's going to be coming out, and the questions like, can we require them to, go back to their previous employment or try and get a job prior to assistance, those kind of things. Before I say yes or no to that, we need to look at guidance and questions that are being asked around not only the state, around the country, when this guidance comes out every so often. So I think there's a lot of answers that have to be, or questions that have to be answered yet. And so keep asking them, because we will inquire now about that.
Commissioner Delory.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a lot of really good input here, and I agree with all of them. But I want to expound on what Commissioner Hart was talking about. I don't want to take anything away from the individual assistance that's listed, but I truly believe that the small business direct assistance is one of the backbones of the economy, because small business is the majority of what the economy is. We've heard and seen those numbers. And I do understand that you have, let me get my glasses on, excuse me, 1.5 from ARPA and $2 million from CARES. I really think there needs to be maybe more money, because the small business portion of the economy is such a viable portion. And there's many aspects of it that can actually be fruitful for us to get the economy back on track and to encourage people to get those jobs that you're talking about, Commissioner, as well as getting people back to work. And so I'd like to see more money put into that category.
Okay, we're going to get to that category. But
Well, we're on page 20, what was it, page 20?
I'm on page 15. She's on page 27.
I'm on page 27.
I went to page 27.
We're going to
That's where you went.
to page 27, but there are some things.
We're on page 25.
Well, we're on page.
I really believe that that's what needs to happen.
25.
25, not 15.
Those are
okay.
speed readers.
Okay, continue
Okay.
before somebody else has a question.
All right, so right now I have 2.75 allocated
Agreeing with you.
for these kind of, the things that we just talked about. Okay. So now we're into direct assistance. So what we had originally proposed for, in the last time we talked about this, was $7 million for individual assistance, $4 million for small business, and $1 million for nonprofit. So I scaled it back a little bit because we ran out of money, but these original numbers, these are pretty consistent with what the scaled back numbers. If you'll recall, I did it based on a proportion of what we awarded during CARES and used that as a guideline and we actually, there was more demand for individual assistance than there was small business assistance. So that's what that was based on, but we can certainly beef it up if that's what the board's interested in. I talked with you about the additional $3 million remaining in the CARES funding, and that the municipalities will engage with us on this. So there probably will be more in small business, but this time it'll be coming from the cities. Once we get through that original $2 million, we're only now looking at, once we get past the $2 million, we would only be looking at businesses in unincorporated Seminole County for small business assistance. So, and the cities would then fund. So there may be this $3.5 million that we've got proposed here will likely be more than that once the cities decide that how much they want to ante up.
I just think it's important.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is important. So we've already talked about the rental and mortgage assistance that we've got available. So on the individual assistance, because we've got significant rental assistance for folks that are at 80% or below AMI, and we've got some mortgage assistance, and not nearly as much as rental, the 1.6, I'm not sure. Like we said, we estimate 300 households, we could help with that. And those are also, remember, that the number of households at 80% or below AMI who have mortgages versus are paying rent, there's going to be fewer mortgage holders at that level. We would suggest that the direct assistance programs for individuals using the ARPA dollars initially be set up for folks that are beyond the 80% AMI. Same sort of criteria about hardship, same focused on arrears and not prospectively. We think we can plug that gap. And I don't have the metrics, and maybe we can, I don't know if Allison and Carrie can pull them for us, how many people were kicked out of the rental assistance program because their income was too high. I don't know that it's going to be a real reflection because we've said that's one of the criteria, so we may have folks that are not applying, but it'll at least give us some idea of what's happening there.
Commissioner Zimbauer.
Question along those lines, Nicole, is that I think I didn't understand the answer to this. Just want to make sure. We're making sure that these folks aren't eligible for some other program prior to automatically doing this program. In other words, are we verifying that there's not already another program that they would be eligible for instead of using the ARPA? Therefore, leveraging the ARPA funds for something like mental health or homelessness or whatever it might be?
I don't know that we're checking with other rental assistance programs that we have, but I think most of our efforts, I'll get back with you on that.
I would just hate to use the ARPA money if there are other programs or grant monies there that could be used for that. Understood. We could use the ARPA to go further.
So the other programs that we're going to have are probably not going to be targeted at the above 80% AMI. And then the money that we're getting from the rescue plan, the separate money for that, can only be used for that purpose.
Right.
But we can check, but my guess is if we're going to focus the ARPA dollars on the folks that aren't qualifying for the other program, there's probably not going to be other federal assistance programs that are going to assist people who are at above 80% AMI. But we'll check on that.
Could I ask that a different way?
Sure.
So if we're coordinating with the cities and it's going through a central intake, are we validating that we're not giving something out at the city level and the county level?
It would not be given out at the city level. We would be administering the program directly, and then the cities would transfer funds to us based on if it's in a city that we would agree to a limit.
But you have a distinction between, at one point, everybody can come in. At another point, it's county versus city. And so you could come in two different methodologies at two different times. And so our system needs to be triggered.
Yeah, they're only going to be able to come in through our portal either time. So we would manage all of that. That's one of our big concerns is duplication of people pulling out of two pots of money. So even if it was a city individual that was applying for they would go through our portal, we would process it. Then we would, and we would pay it, and then we would bill the city for it, and the city would reimburse us for that.
I hear you, but what I'm looking to hear you say is that we will not allow them to duplicate.
We will not allow them to duplicate. Yes. So I've talked to you already about the city participation, so I don't think we need to go through, but the overall proposed allocation on this is $7.5 million, with the understanding that the cities would be contributing at some level on all of these. And not every city, but I think the majority of the cities want to participate. And Bryant I already got with Bryant, he's already working on participation agreements, because we want them signed as quick as we can get them. The next area that we talked about, do you want to talk about direct assistance anymore? Are we ready to move? Okay. Mental health services was another category that we talked about last time. And what we had proposed in that original chart was $2 to $5 million for partnerships with mental health providers, and then $9 million for partnerships with the sheriff's office to deliver the mental health programs that come out of their office. So we do know that there will be other funding opportunities, and especially with respect to the sheriff's office. Lisa and I have been talking. They're very vigilant about recognizing what they might be eligible for. As I said, the cities have indicated a willingness to participate. And this, just so you know, this mental health services would be included in the support public health response, which is why when you look at the next slide, I have stuff that's not really mental health. They would just be in the same category. So our recommendation is, I have included $6 million in here for the sheriff's proposal, which is $9 million. The cities have indicated that they would be willing to fund the other $3 million.
Perfect.
So great participation there, great support there. Those services do reach across the county. They're generally not services that the cities provide, so there was a great deal of support for that. I have $2 million in there, again, for partnerships. That may be something where the cities will participate as well. That would be on a pro rata basis if there were certain programs that they wanted to participate in. The other thing that I included with this group and what you'll see in the responding to the public health response is our community health initiative that we talked about at the retreat. I put $1 million in there because I think that we are certainly going to hit some qualified census tracts through that program with everything from community paramedicine to other things. So I included $1 million of ARPA money to help underwrite and get that initiative started. And then I also just set aside $1 million for general COVID health-related costs because this really is a COVID-driven program. And we don't know what we've got in front of us. It can always, hopefully we won't need them, and they can always be transferred to another program. So I've got $10 million. You'll see in the support public health response category, I've got $10 million. So any questions on this? Sustainable homelessness diversion. So that was a category we talked about last time, and we had 25 to 30 million for homelessness services and 10 to 15 million for affordable housing. And one of the reasons that the numbers were so high is that there was a proposal to do 20 million as an endowment. Great idea. Unfortunately, we can't do that with the ARPA dollars. Fantastic idea, but so that's going to fall out. And we also wanted to put a significant amount of money into the Affordable Housing Trust. Again, we can't do that either. Same concept as the endowment. So our suggested allocation is $6.5 million. I've got $4.5 million for homelessness diversion. You all received a request from ROM for 3-year funding, and you approved an agreement today that has $350 of ARPA money, which we went ahead and moved forward. The request was for $3 million. The budget that was submitted, there's almost $600,000 in there that wouldn't be eligible for ARPA, but that number may change as we work with the $2.5 million. We'll continue to work with ROM to really refine the budget and to see, but based on the budget that was submitted, the contingency and reserve funds cannot be funded through ARPA. There's probably going to be some other stuff though, so we'll continue to work with them on the budget, but I just plugged that number in there based on the budget that we got. And then there's also $1.6 million for other homelessness activities. I'm sure there will be other things that we need to do, so that's where the $4.5 million came from. And then I included $2 million to be placed into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We will have to expend that money by the end of '26, but I think it gives us, that'll put us at $3 million in the trust fund right now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The homelessness diversion, the $4.5 million, curious, what is that intended for when we're doing individual assistance and we're doing rental assistance? What is the 4.5? What is it intended to cover that those would not otherwise cover?
Well, there are some folks that find themselves homeless that do not have rent or mortgage to pay. So it would cover folks that are not eligible under that, who are maybe in their cars or who need case management, those kind of things.
Okay.
Follow-up to that. Can we get an idea of how much of that would be allocated toward caseworkers and wraparound services?
We can try, I don't really know at this point. It's just kind of parked there. We can give you a list of things that they would be eligible for.
And that'd be great.
Yeah.
Chairman?
Yes.
I can address the question with regard to the ROM. The ROM budget that was submitted actually does include a line item for caseworkers, et cetera. So we know that with regard to the 2.5 million plus the 350. I don't know about the 1.65 million.
The 1.65, we don't really have designated. It's
Understood.
there for what we might need over the next 3 years. But we can certainly refine that and give you a list of these are the things that we anticipate. I'm sure that Allison and Carrie can give me way beyond 10 times the things that we could do. But I just wanted to kind of have it parked somewhere because I know we're going to need it for something, just based on our past experience.
And you'll update us?
We'll bring you programs and say, we want to do this program, it's ARPA funded. So we'll keep you in the loop on that.
Great.
I need to get some sort of plan and structure in place, though, before the end of August.
Well,
So-
agreed. I think the more we can focus on the mental health programs, fits into all of these categories in my mind.
Agreed. And we can move things around. I will tell you, because I haven't gotten to the end of the story, I'm still, although I'm not 150 to 400 million, I am still 11.5 million over the 91. So we've still got more money allocated out here than we have
And
on the
let me
table.
reiterate the county manager's initial comments. This is for direction. This is not guaranteed. She still has 11 million?
Yes, I have, when we get to the end of the day, there's still 11 million. So the direction that you're giving me today is helpful. And it is good to know that if you don't want as much money directed to homelessness services and you want more in mental health, those are the kind of things I need to know today. So,
Mental health.
Well,
Chairman?
Yes. And then Commissioner Delory, Commissioner Herr.
So often, folks get identified for mental health services when they come in through homelessness services. So they're not unrelated. And they don't end up in the mental health services if we don't have an effective program that is the entry point. And the services through homeless diversion are one of the many entry points for access to mental health and substance use issues. My question with regard to this is that have the cities agreed to give any with regard to homelessness, or do they not have a homelessness issue?
this is one of the things that's on the list as an opportunity for coordination. I think that it is not a pro rata. There was not agreement that they were going to do a pro rata, but we put it in the category of optional discretionary. And my impression now, this was just with staff, but my impression is that some of them are willing to at least make a showing of participating and directing some of their funds.
I think that's a significant start, and my math on the mental health is that the city's got 90 million, the county got 90 million, 2/3 of the mental health is coming from the county, 1/3 is coming from the cities, so.
For the sheriff's portion of it, yeah.
For the sheriff's portion of it, so we shouldn't lose that in the translation and conversation. It is, all of this is all of our issue.
Commissioner Delory.
Well, a lot of what I was going to say was already said by Commissioner Herr, that I would agree that mental health and homeless, there's a fine line, as well as it being two separate issues. I want to make sure that we're putting the appropriate amount of money into not just the homeless, but the mental health. And it is a county-wide issue. It is not city versus county or county versus city. It is truly a county-wide issue. And you can look at the reason why the numbers totally is so pretty much equal is because half the population lives in the city, the other half lives in the county. And we can all work well together in a sandbox, or we can all fend for ourselves. And I'm liking the fact that it all seems to be working well together, and hopefully we can continue that way.
I'm very encouraged by the
So am I.
attitudes of the
I'm
city
encouraged
managers.
by what you're saying.
Of course, they all have boards too, so, and
I understand that, but if
competing
we need to make
interests. Yeah.
presentations to individuals or to board members, please let us know.
And they have, at least one city manager has asked.
Because we all know
if we
other
would come
elected
and
officials that we could
explain
talk to.
to their boards kind of what we're trying to accomplish. So I think there is some real opportunity, and I'm very encouraged by the spirit
And
of
so am I.
cooperation.
I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing as well.
So the next category, are we good with homelessness and affordable housing?
Yes.
The next category that we had talked about before was communication and virtual service enhancement, website upgrade, virtual services upgrades. We had $2 to $4 million on website and $2 to $5 million on virtual services. So these would seem like they would be kind of there would be no question about these being eligible under ARPA, but I don't think they are. Even though they are continuity of service related, they would be eligible under sort of the general government category related to revenue replacement. So you'll see when we get to the allocation, I've left sort of a contingency under the revenue replacement category beyond the 27.5 that you approved at the budget work session, and I would suggest that we earmark a part of that for the website and the technology upgrades. So any questions on that? Any concerns with that?
Nope.
We're almost there, folks. I know this is a lot. The next category that we talked about previously were community service facilities. These would be really maybe some capital construction or contribution to facilities that would provide services to underserved communities, such as a health clinic, early learning centers, sheriff's substation, that kind of thing. We had 10 to 20 million in there originally. I've left 5 million in there for this because I do think this is an important aspect, and it is something that the Act certainly speaks to, particularly with respect to qualified census tracts. So I've reduced it, though, just based on the limited funds from 10 to 20 million to 5 million. Next is water and sewer service. We had 20 to 30 million identified in our original conversation with respect to septic to sewer conversion. This is one of these categories that doesn't have to be COVID-related, but there are a lot of guidelines related to it in the Act. And the interim rule aligns eligible projects with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And it appears that this funding is that the projects that are eligible for funding are publicly owned facilities, which is, I think, an important distinction. Additionally, of course, we have the infrastructure bill that's swirling around out there that this would certainly cover as well. And for your, just kind of to put this in perspective, our estimated cost, as you know, we did a study to estimate the cost to do septic to sewer conversion in the Wekiva Basin, and it was about $30,000 a home. Orange County just did a project. I think Commissioner Constantine kind of briefed you on it. That project was $60,000 a home, so it's pretty expensive. We would never expect to do it on our own. It hopefully would be in partnership with other funding. The project that was just done in Orange County was 60% from the state, 25% from the utility, and 15% from the property owners. So 10 million, and if you were able to leverage it that way, it's not an insignificant amount of money in the grand scheme of things. However, I am a little concerned, and we'll have to find out what the funding source is, because if the state funding source is actually a federal pass-through, if it is money coming from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, then we can't use the ARPA dollars as a match. So we'll drill down into that a little bit more. But I did think it was important to leave some money in there for that. I would make a suggestion to you. We did not talk about this before, but I would recommend, and put it in here because we didn't talk about stormwater before, but I would suggest that we add stormwater to this, because stormwater is also eligible under the clean water. Water and sewer kind of sounds funny, but the stormwater would be incorporated, but it is part of the Clean Water, the Clean Water Act.
That makes total sense to add it.
And the reason I would suggest adding it is we have local match for that through the infrastructure sales tax dollars. So we may be able to get there easier than we would on the septic to sewer conversion.
And just so you know, the disparity of 30 to 60,000 seems like a lot. It is. Most of the difference is the extent of the lines that have to get to it. Just wanted to let, it's not the hookup or anything, it's getting the lines to them, and that's what was going on in Orange County specifically. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So if there's no objection, when I bring this back to you, I would like to add stormwater as a potential infrastructure project as well. And then the last category that we talked about before we had all of this guidance was outdoor recreational opportunities, and we know the significant uptick in use that our outdoor recreational facilities and trails experienced during COVID. So we thought that was, and we spent some CARES Act money on upgrading some of those facilities. We had plugged in 20 to 25 million for recreational lands and facilities and 10 to 15 for trails. It appears from the guidance that for the most part, these projects would not be eligible unless they're located in a qualified target census tract. So I took that number down because I do think we have some opportunities to $3 million. And so I left some money in there, but we're going to really have to target those funds to qualified census tract areas. So that was, any questions on that? Okay, so that's the last category. I know you can't, it's difficult to read on the screen, but you have this in your packets. So I took the original 2-page chart that we had, and I summarized everything here. You can see that under the revenue replacement, I have $27.5 million for budget stabilization. I've taken the remainder that we could convert and placed it there as a revenue replacement contingency, and I would like to show that to the feds, to Treasury, as just revenue replacement, because we don't have to quantify that for them. So that's there. I think we have some things that are out there on the horizon that we may need that money for. So with all of that, we still are in excess of the 91.6 million by 11.65 million that could get rolled up for the purposes of reporting into the contingency dollars. So I think we can show a balance, but I just, if we do that, we limit the contingency fund, just so you know. But
You're a heck of a lot closer than you were.
We're a heck of a lot closer than we were, but what's coming up next is we have a follow-up work session with you on the 10th to give you some better refined and actually give you more bones of a plan. And then on the 24th, we would ask you to approve the final structure. So I'll go back to this chart, but I want to make sure we're on the right track, and if we need to redirect, and if you need something different from us to feel comfortable with where we're going, just please let me know.
I think we got a lot of feedback today, but also, your door is always open.
Where to find you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we are finished with that. I think we have one other on the county attorney report. Is Desmond here?
Yep, but
Okay, there he is, over there. You were hidden.
while Desmond's coming up, let me just, and I want to limit this conversation, okay?
Don't you always?
Good luck.
No, I'm going to ask you, I'll tell you to be quiet. But, as I'm working on something that I've been working on for the last few months. There may be a need for a special meeting down the road when I may have to make a recommendation to you on a moment's notice. But I'll give you one small tidbit. You may recall that there was an issue about somebody purchasing sports memorabilia equipment from the tax collector's budget. There was initial correspondence, I can't make it up, that they may want to give us the memorabilia back. I told them, you'd have to shoot me first if that's the deal. What I'm asking for, will be asking for, is not only the money that was used to pay for the memorabilia, but also the memorabilia back so that we can sell it back out on the market so that someone doesn't profit from, okay, we'll give you the money back, but we keep the memorabilia. Those are decisions that are to be made, and I would just ask for your patience, and I hope to have more reports coming to you shortly on that. In the meantime, as you know, on the opioid litigation, my office over the last year or so has provided you with basically bi-monthly written updates, and we've included the previous updates with each one. And I'm going to turn it over to Desmond, who's done great work with our outside counsel, and our outside counsel has nothing but great words about the work Desmond's been doing for Seminole County on this. But in a nutshell, there's been a bankruptcy proceeding with Purdue Pharma, the big defendant, if you will. We're going to talk about $5 billion in assets that will eventually be distributed to the governments. Florida is anticipating about 7% of that, those funds, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Desmond as to what next steps. Now, it's already been reported to you what we're going to be asking for on June 28th, but I want to make sure that Desmond briefs each of you as to where we are and what the next two steps are going to be.
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Desmond Morrell, Senior Assistant County Attorney. As Brian's mentioned, we have been engaged in the opioid litigation for several years at this point. Today, we are at a critical juncture with one of our defendants, Purdue Pharma. So in short, as was explained in the opioid memo that you all received on June the 28th, we are at that critical juncture with Purdue Pharma. Since 2019, Purdue Pharma has been engaged in extensive bankruptcy as a result of thousands of civil lawsuits related to opioid damages and deaths. After lengthy negotiations with state attorney generals, the U.S. government, outside firms, special counsel, as well as several other entities, insurers, individuals, Purdue has come up with a proposed bankruptcy plan. Now, the plan includes several provisions, which we've included for you all, but I will go ahead and repeat them. Number one, the Purdue Corporation would continue to exist under a new entity name with indirect ownership by state, local, and government, by state and local governments. This continued operation and eventual sale is expected to net between $1 and $2 billion. In addition to this, there's $4.275 billion that is expected to come from Purdue's shareholding family, which some of you may be familiar with, the Sacklers. In addition to this, we're anticipating insurance proceeds and other assets, which will be included as a part of this larger settlement. We are anticipating, as Brian's indicated, approximately $5 billion to trickle down to the state of Florida. $5 billion among state and local governments, with approximately 7% of this coming to the state of Florida. From there, of course, it'll be funneled down and end up with the local governments, municipalities, counties, and respective agencies. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is one of 15 defendants, 15-plus defendants in this large-scale litigation. We know that this is just one domino for a series of dominoes that are yet to fall. I do want to impress upon you all that in the next couple of weeks, we will be returning to you all with a larger settlement proposal from the state of Florida. So although these defendants and some of them are coming to settlement agreements, I know you all are wondering, how are we going to receive any money? What does that process look like? So at the next meeting, we will have representatives from our outside counsel that can answer all of the questions that I'm sure you all have. In the meantime, I'm happy to field any questions that you may have. But for today's purpose, we're simply looking to approve the one bankruptcy plan for Purdue Pharma, which again, we're expecting to yield anywhere from approximately $5 million and then trickle down to Florida, in which we'll receive a decent sum of that.
$5 billion.
Desmond,
Say
$5 billion.
Billion, excuse me.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
okay. The question, so Desmond is asking us to approve the pharma.
The bankruptcy plan.
Bankruptcy. Is there a question, sir?
Correct.
I do. Desmond, thank you very much, and
Sure.
and good work on this, by the way. Back in the beginning, go back through the state attorneys are going to take over ownership.
Sure. So because this is a national litigation, each state's attorney general is kind of overseeing what their state is doing. So although there is the national litigation, we still have negotiations between us as a local government and our attorney general to see how those funds will be distributed once we do reach a settlement. So several figures have been tossed around. I don't even want to get into that at this point. But in short, we're expected to see 3 pots of money. A pot designated strictly to local governments, a pot that will be overseen by the state, and then a third pot, which is more of a sliding scale, which will be utilized by cities, local governments, and a few other special interest projects. It's also important to note that all of the settlement funds as a result of this are to be used for the specific purpose of abating the opioid issue. So as much as, we may want to utilize funds elsewhere, of course, we know the primary focus is to address, of course, the opioid epidemic.
So did I understand correct, during the bankruptcy proceeding and negotiation, the state's going to take over ownership of the company?
So essentially what's happening is there's indirect ownership. I think that's the best way to see it. So whatever profits that continue to accrue and the eventual sale of that company will then be utilized as, again, more money that'll trickle down to governments. So Purdue Pharma is not completely shutting the door. They're kind of repurposing themselves, again, as a part of this negotiated settlement, with the idea of continuing to generate money that, the local governments can utilize. It's a finite plan. At a certain point, there is the intention to sell that company, and then whatever proceeds that would come forth will then again trickle
And
down.
that'd be sold by the states?
Yeah, I'm sure there would be a similar process such as this, where there have been proposals as to how we sell, what that'll look like, but that's a little bit further out at this point, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. It sounded like, I think what I was hearing was that the state was going to be in the opioid business.
Well, yeah, and actually, no, they're basically, the company will be history. It will basically be ownership until it's completely dissolved. And I don't know the number yet. Our outside counsel can answer this for us, but basically it will be a series of trustees that will be running this for the public entities, but eventually that company will be in the ash heap.
Great. Thank you very much. Good work.
No problem.
Anything else? Any other questions? We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the bankruptcy plan. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you,
very much,
Commissioners.
Desmond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond.
There has been no future agenda items submitted. Is there any on the horizon at this moment? Commissioner Hurd and Commissioner Zimbauer.
Just a heads up that we will be submitting an agenda item for a permanent no-through truck restriction on Longwood Markham Road. Based on all of the construction that's happening out there, we have literally rerouted trucks into neighborhoods, and we have done a temporary sign in that area. It has slowed the pace down. It has not stopped the pace, but without a permanent sign, as I understand it, enforcement is limited. So we will be bringing that forward. And working with staff at this time. Diana's going to yell at me if I don't say that.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
Yes, thank you. And this is going to somewhat overlap with some of the things we're doing in the LDC, but it's actually a bigger ask. You've heard me ask during some of these work sessions for our planning staff to go back and dust off the previous studies for this county and where this county was ultimately going to be at a certain juncture and what the build-out of this county was. There's numbers anywhere from 750,000 to 1.1 million population for this county that previous studies apparently have shown. So I would ask that and I'm not advocating another work session because we certainly have plenty of those, but I would like to commission further study to update and revise those studies as to what this county is actually going to look like. We continue to have these discussions, and we're changing some of the codes, which is a great move, and it's some of the things we need to do. But I think these citizens of our county deserve to know what the future ultimately looks like. We hear all the comments about too much traffic, too much congestion, not enough trees, not enough drainage. So we really need to get a handle on that for like the next 20 or 30 years on what that really is going to look like. I understand updating the LDC is part of that, but I think the reality is unless we build a wall around this county is going to continue to have individuals wanting to move here. So I would want to be looking at things like building height, interacting with our cities. I know we've been trying to do JPAs to understand what that's going to look like on our fringes and where those citizens are going to ultimately end up. So I would like to bring that forward.
Any others?
Could I just comment on that?
Commissioner? Yes, County Manager, go ahead.
Don't do that to her.
I actually think, and Commissioner Zembauer, your office contacted me about this during the break. I think a lot of what you're talking about will be covered in this community conversation and this plan to talk about land use policy moving forward. I know we have some infrastructure and kind of part of another. One of your priorities was establishing levels of service so that we know what our capital needs are. So I think that we would be able to, and we can certainly make sure that the scope captures all of that, because the long-term land use policy that's going to come out of this community conversation should certainly address all of that. So I think that we may have a lot of that covered, but we can make sure that the scope doesn't miss that. I don't think what you're talking about is inconsistent with what the board has talked about as a whole.
Yeah, I'm fine if we can just cover that with ongoing without doing a whole nother work session, and taking another day when we're supposed to have July off.
I would suggest that get rolled into this bigger planning process.
Which I'm fine with.
As directed.
Totally fine with. Thank you.
Anything else? I'm willing to take any more hits. It's okay. Okay, public comment. We've got a couple of them. Ms. Shaddix, and then Mr. Hyde. I have no other yellow cards. Okay, good. Mr. Hyde, you can start meandering up here anytime.
Meandering. I'll get them passed out.
I got super sleepy in the last few minutes, so I'm going to be dragging.
We have that effect on people.
I think it's the air condition. Katrina Shaddix, 1133 Covington Street, Oviedo, Florida. As the Executive Director of Bear Warriors United, may I please have 6 minutes?
You're good.
Yes, thank you. So, oh, crap, hold on, I need my glasses. Can't see it.
Do an extra one.
The first subject we may not need to talk about, if there is still a chance that y'all are going to cut down trees at the Black Bear Wilderness area for the parking lot. Is that still a possibility or not? If not, I don't need to talk about the first part. Still a possibility?
I lost that argument.
Okay. So obviously, I would be against tearing down trees to expand a parking lot, and we know that at this point in history, climate change and flooding is caused and exacerbated by deforestation. We can't cut down trees from a wilderness area that we citizens paid for to preserve and accommodate more cars driven there by people who live outside of Seminole. I just want to take a quick second to propose that trolley system that I talked about 2 weeks ago that would generate income, and we would be charging people coming in from out of the county since they did not pay to protect that land. And I have a copy of the Homosassa Springs trolley system. They charge about $12 to $20 per person. It makes money, covers the cost, and it would prevent cutting down trees for the parking lot, which we don't want to do. And the second topic is that I'd like to request that the commission pass an ordinance banning the use and sale of Roundup, in addition to any and all weed killers, aquatic herbicides, and pesticides containing glyphosate. And what I'm going to do is just read the email that I sent y'all back in April 7th to get it onto record, and then I can resend all of the attachments that I included in the email. Also, wanted to bring up, I don't know if y'all saw this on the front page of the Sanford Herald. It says that we have 3 lakes in Seminole that now have toxic blue-green algae warnings. Did y'all see that?
We're aware of it.
You are.
We find out before they do.
Okay, good. So we all know how those are caused. It's caused by excessive nutrients, fertilizers, pesticides, and the weed killers that I'm hoping that y'all pass an ordinance to ban. And so several months ago, I reported to you the intentional spraying of Roundup on a gopher tortoise burrow on Sterling Park Elementary School property, and the subsequent death of the gopher tortoise living in that burrow, affectionately named Sterling, by the school children. I requested that the school board stop subcontracting with any companies using Roundup on school properties. I personally spoke with the land company crew that day that I went out that saturated the gopher tortoise burrow with poison, had them show me the product. It was Roundup Quick Pro in the blue 6.8-pound jug. I got a picture of that as well as the person who sprayed it. And I sent pictures of the dead gopher tortoise, his burrow, with obvious weed killer saturation, and the actual jug of Roundup to y'all and the school board. Then on April 7th, I received a call from a resident, Kimberly Warner, in the neighborhood adjacent to where Sterling Park Elementary is. She and her neighbor, Michelle Hill, stated that they were witnessing Seminole County spraying chemicals within a few yards of a sandhill crane nest and within the 330-foot buffer of an eagle's nest. I confirmed that it was indeed Seminole County, not a subcontractor, and that the Seminole County employee was spraying toxins containing glyphosate into the water and wildlife habitat. And these pictures, I tried to show y'all last time, but the power went out. It is, and I can pass them around. We have, first of all, the spraying has the, where is it? This right here, you have the county, I don't know if it's a boat, it's almost like a pontoon. He's spraying with the hose, and there's a sandhill crane nest there. Oh, okay. Let me come over here. I'm not getting it. Oh, thanks. Okay. Thank you. All right, where did I go? Okay, so he was spraying the glyphosate. The pictures attached of the sandhill crane nest. The employee was spraying. Right after the Seminole County employee left, I actually talked to him on the phone, got him to stop spraying. The sandhill crane family went right over to the water that he just sprayed and drank it. We were hoping that there was going to be a better outcome for that sandhill crane family, but the baby, that the kid's name John Cena, was actually killed by a car. He was ran over, and I think the residents contacted you, Commissioner Delary, about it, and now we're going to do something about the speeding. But the spraying of poisons by the county should be stopped. And I have several articles that are very convincing. I have overwhelming evidence why y'all should do a glyphosate ban. These are all just pictures of the birds going back over to the water to drink the poison water. And it's also a nest that is monitored by Audubon. You can tell where the spraying was, and it's within the 350-foot buffer of the eagle's nest. And it's also another picture demonstrating that, which is a federal violation. So the spraying, even though the county's doing the spraying, we're breaking some federal laws that are super concerning. And also to add to that, we found out recently that the majority of manatees have glyphosate in their system. And this just happens to be a year when the record number of manatees have died. And on the paper that I gave y'all, oh, I'm out. And I'm tired. I really don't want to go on. Can I just send y'all an email and go over everything instead of arguing my point here? Good, thank you. I think I'm ready. Do you want to take these? Okay, great.
I have a question for the county attorney, Mr. Chairman.
Please, go ahead.
Would you be so kind as to give this commission a briefing on our ability to control glyphosate? My research indicates we're preempted by the state and federal guidelines. If you could just help us with that.
Okay.
And affirm or deny my review process and share that with my fellow commissioners.
Yep. I will give that to you next meeting.
Thank you. And I have a question for Ms. Shaddix.
Oh, God.
In your How Trees Increase Property Values, I think most of us and all of us would agree with that.
Yes.
And you've done a case study of Quebec City, Canada. Have you ever been to Quebec City?
No, I've been to Victoria.
So Quebec City is a very unique tourist destination that probably has more bears and trees than there will ever be people, even during the height of the tourist season. And many of these trees, when you go into the suburb area, if you want to call it that for what it's worth, in that area, many of these trees are extremely large. Many of them jack pines, large pines, birch, poplar, and so forth, which are many breeds or species that we don't have here. But I found it interesting, that study on such a small geographic area, because they really don't have a lot of population or urban development, if you will. The majority of it's like driven by tourism. So you've got a tourist area that really has been carved out along the river and in the forest, and there's a lot more bears and trees than there are people.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Sounds like, yeah. Some
Well, thank
place I'd
you.
rather go. Did you want more support about the trees? Do you need these articles to read? Because they, okay. It's other than Canada. Charlie Carr stuff on there, too.
The record reflect 5 more articles.
I think I
do have a question for Mr. Chairman, if I may, to Mr. Zimbauer.
Yes.
The area that you're talking about in Canada, I'm not that familiar with it.
Yes.
Was that a farming area, or is it a farming area?
Quebec City?
Yeah.
No, it's actually a trade area. Fur trade area is originally what it was, where fur traders came in from the north that actually did their trading for furs to be distributed throughout the world.
Okay.
It's now a tourist destination. Yes, I'm sorry.
French trading post.
That's right. And believe it or not, you can actually, to this day, go in the stores and there are full taxidermy bears.
I was just curious.
5, 6, 7 of them in the same store. I mean, furs.
The reason I was asking is I've actually been to Quebec City as well as Malmö, Sweden, and that part of Sweden is very much, I don't know about today, but
Right.
years ago it was a dairy area.
Yeah.
Very much in the
If you want to look at Quebec City, just go into Jay's office. I did steal you. That's right. Come on, Mr. Hyde, please.
Yes, save us.
Mr. Hyde, would you like 3 minutes or 6 minutes?
I only need 3 minutes.
Fabulous.
Member of American Legion should get 6 minutes. Please go ahead,
I considered that. My name is Bill Hyde, live at 2379 Audley Street in Oviedo. I only get 3 minutes because I'm only one person. But that's okay. I have a lot to say about a lot of things today, but I think I can get it all down in 3 minutes. Transparency. When I was first in politics some 30 years ago, if you wanted to know what's on the agenda, what they were talking about, you could drive down to City Hall or County Hall, look at it on the wall, or you could pick up the phone and call somebody. That was it. What goes on today is infinitely better. You guys are doing a pretty good job. I got bombed with email, Facebook, Twitters, on everything that goes on here, not to mention some of the social media stuff. One criticism I do have is the webpage really needs fixing, folks.
We're working on it.
By the way,
We're
the
working
email
on it.
opt-in, man, that would go a long way. On the Zoom, okay, I want to give you all a little heads up on the Zoom thing. My feeling is, and it's not going to be real popular, I have concerns about you continuing to use the Zoom. And one of the things that I had thought of is what's going to happen the day that some advocacy group decides to send out a call to arms that goes all over not only the county, not only the state, but maybe all over the country. And you have folks logging in on Zoom, and there's nothing to stop you from coming in on a VPN. We all know what a VPN is today, don't we? And logging in under fake names and fake addresses. Something seriously to think about. I've thought about it numerous times and wondered how that could be addressed. SGTV is available to everybody. You could possibly fix the 665-0808. Yes, I have that number memorized, and you could call in. So I do have serious concerns about the Zoom. As far as the land use disposition, folks, 2 or 3 years ago, all we wanted you to do was make it a supermajority, make it a 4/5, take it to that, get it done, and we're done with this, and the politics is out of it. On PDs, folks, y'all like PDs. I don't like them. You have a bad record in my neighborhood with your PD, specifically the Enclave. We've got one coming up pretty soon. It'll be on one of your agendas. I don't share your enthusiasm. I got 30 seconds left. I want to say something positive. I want to thank Commissioner DeLaury and all the commissioners for your support for veterans in Seminole County. Our American Legion post is a very small one, and it's amazing that our 150 or 160 members was able to be recognized at the state level as the best post in the state. It says a lot not only to the men and women who are members. Our commander, Bill Mitchum, outgoing commander, he'll be turning it over on Thursday night to our new incoming slave driver, Laurel Ross, and we look forward to doing as much more for the county and our residents, not just the veterans, but the entire community. We thank you for your support, and we will support you as well. Thank you.
God bless you, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to District Commissioners' reports, District 4.
Right. So first thing I want to do is congratulate Commissioner Constantine. He was elected at the Florida Association of Counties annual meeting last week as the president-elect of that association statewide. Very proud of him. He's among a very fine group of elected officials in that organization, and I know he's going to lead that organization very well. So, yeah, congratulations.
Good stuff.
As a part of that conference, we were able to attend lots of different breakout sessions, and actually Commissioner Constantine was a panelist on one of those breakout sessions, which was really fascinating. It was legislators who had been in local government and local government officials who had been legislators. And it was really, really fun to hear the discussion about what I wish I knew when I was, because now I realize what I've done. It was very good. So thank you for participating in that. And I know the other county commissioners that were there in the room from all across the state really appreciated hearing that really candid dialogue among you all. It was a great breakout session. The Florida-friendly landscaping field trip that I hosted at my home this last week. I'm wearing a gator pin, which is something that my husband, if he saw, would be very unhappy with, since I'm married to a Seminole alumni and I have a child going to FSU in the fall. But I'm sporting my gator pin today because the University of Florida Institute for Food and Agricultural Sciences, IFAS, was the main star of our show, really, at this little gathering I had at the house. And so I want to thank specifically Dr. Essen Mamal, who is the director of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program from the University of Florida Center for Land Use Efficiency. She actually came down from Gainesville so that we could benefit from her expertise. Clara Lewis, who is the statewide coordinator of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, Florida Friendly Communities was in attendance, as well as our own extension agent, Tina McIntyre. She is our Florida Friendly Landscape agent here in Seminole County. So the 3 gators were in the house, and it really was fantastic. I want to thank our own staff here, Rebecca Hammock, our Director of Development Services, and Kim Ornberg, who's the Manager of Water Shed Management, and Marie Lackey from Water Quality. All of them were there, and we spent almost 3 hours learning, dialoguing, did a little scavenger hunt out in the yard, and really, I think, had some good exchanges. I think that one of my big takeaways is that we really need to expand on our relationship with IFAS. They have a new program that they're working on that they're going to roll out across the state that is focused on incentives for Florida-friendly landscaping. And it was just kind of neat to hear all the things that they're working on that we're sitting here talking about, and they're doing it up in Gainesville. And so why are we reinventing the wheel? So I think I would love to see us really continue to work on that relationship. I also am wondering if my colleagues would, if I can go down and use the overhead. Can I use the short throw? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So this is about trees. Today is tree day.
Do you want 3 minutes or 6?
With all of our technology, I thought maybe there was a way I could do this from my laptop, but I don't think so. With Zoom, I could have. That's right. Okay.
Are we going to see our big tree in the backyard?
You might. Okay. All right. How do I zoom in? Yeah. No, keep going. Yeah, a little bit more. Okay, awesome. All right, this is really hard to see. This is from the county's archives. This is a 1940 aerial. I forgot to bring a pen with me to point.
What you need?
All right, I'm being very needy, I'm sorry.
Don't you have that in color, Commissioner Lockhart?
1940, no. Well, I don't know. Ask Melvin. This little spot right here, which I tried to highlight, is my yard in 1940. This is Lock Arbor in 1940, and you can clearly see Lake Boulevard, which I highlighted in yellow. There weren't very many trees there then. And so then, because I started feeling guilty when I was talking about this tree, I'm like, I'm really having some guilt feelings through lunch and everything about the tree. So then I pulled up, this is, let's see, this is 1972. All right, so you can still really see Lake Boulevard there. This is Country Club Road, this is 46A, this is the Mayfair Golf Course here. So here's Lake Boulevard. You can still really see it in 1972. That's the year my house was built, right there. All right. Here's 2002. This is a year after we actually bought that house. And Lake Boulevard's getting harder and harder to see. It was actually hard to highlight it, but it's here. And the reason it's getting harder and harder to see is because there's more trees that are filling in. And now we finally get to color in 2021. I won't talk about the shape of Lake Amory because that's been a source of constant contention as well. But here you can start to see a little bit more of Lake Boulevard because we had some hurricanes in 2004. Anyway, so there's Casa de Lockhart right there. And so when I've looked at, can we get them there side by side? Kind of, sort of. When I looked at 1940 compared to 2021, oh, it's off the page. This is hard. You guys that come up here and do this?
Yeah, we need new technology for that process,
This
too.
is crazy. Okay, so when I compare 1940 to 2021, I'm not feeling too bad about taking out my one tree. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still love our trees and do everything we can to protect them, but this was a lesson for me just going through this process today, because as much as we want to make sure we're preserving trees, we have to remember that we are actually, yeah, we're adding more houses, but we really, I mean, the pictures don't lie. The canopy is definitely improved over time. So that was my little show and tell.
Good project, Commissioner Lockhart. There's a lot of those old aerials that people would be shocked how few trees used to be here.
I would remind everybody, or add to that, though, did you see how much less water
there
we
was,
have
yes.
today?
Yeah, so that's why I said I won't talk about the lake, because that's a whole nother conversation.
Does that mean
We're
all
just
those
talking about
extra trees are sucking up all the water?
No.
I don't know. Anyway, so that's my report. Thank you.
Good report.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
All right. District 5.
I have no show and tell, but I will report that the Career Source Consortium met. We meet 2 times a year, so this was one. We did select a new chairman. I nominated Mayor Demings. He is the only one on the consortium that has any experience with the consortium, so I thought that the wise choice. And then promptly took the position of vice chair.
They gave you my old position.
So we do have an interlocal agreement that expires on May of 2022, and I don't want to hear that I didn't tell you that. So there's your heads up on that, since we only meet twice a year. They did receive $7.5 million in CARES Act funding from Orange County, so that was nice. And so that's my report on Career Source, my first report on Career Source. The very exciting thing that happened this week for me is the discovery of an innovation lab that is housed at none other than our own Department of Health. And it is absolutely on par with something that you would see in a consulting operation. It gives the opportunity for us to go there and innovate. And the idea around innovate is around quality improvement to existing processes. There's a methodology on how you go through the discussions. You identify the issue, you identify the right people to be in the room, you leave your badges at the door because everybody isn't equal when they're in the room, and you innovate around solutions to that. I asked Nicole to join me. I think I made Steve Fussel's week. I don't know if he is still out here, but he appeared to be walking on cloud 9 when we left there, as was I. It is an amazing resource right here in our community and free to us, so I would encourage all of our departments to think about that as you're wrestling with an opportunity for improvement in your own areas. There is a tremendous opportunity here. They will facilitate it for us. They are trained facilitators, free of charge. And they have also opened up their doors to the local hospitals to improve their quality and outcomes with regard to healthcare, which that's their focus. I also thought it was interesting that in their annual performance reviews for management and supervisory staff, that they have quality initiatives, a number of quality initiatives that they expect folks to take on in order to improve processes. So that was wildly exciting, and I hope that we take up the opportunity within our own organization. And that's it.
Great, fantastic. Great report.
District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, my executive assistant was not in the office because she had to take off unexpectedly. And I want to publicly thank Alex and Sam of the county manager's office for filling in for her. And I want to thank you as well as them. They both did a phenomenal job, and I can't thank Alex and Sam enough for all the things that they did to help me that past week. Even though it was a short week, there was a lot going on. I wanted to thank them, so please let them know that. I've always talked about Sunrail many times, giving you updates. The Sunrail design build ad is posted for Phase 2 North, is being advertised, started on June 28th, so it is moving out as planned. And I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Also like to congratulate the Orlando Sanford Airport. I hear that they have 2 new airlines flying from Sanford to 5 cities in Canada. So it looks like we're going to be getting up to Canada a little bit more if possible. And it's nice that they're actually branching out with new destinations. Want to make sure we have the save the date for the Veterans Appreciation event that's coming up this September 25th. I've been very involved in the past couple of years, and it's going to be at the Heroes Memorial again from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I know Bill was there last year with his wife, and it was a great event, so please pass the word out there. There is something that's coming up next year, and it's a Special Olympics. It's coming to Central Florida. It's going to be here June 5th through the 12th. There'll be around 5,500 athletes and coaches from approximately, 50 different states in our country. This will be the focus point for the Special Olympics next year. I really think that we should be putting out the red carpet for them. I'd like to see what we can do to do that. Don't know if it's a parade in downtown Sanford. How do we host them? And I'd like to ask our staff to do that and bring back some different ideas of what would be appropriate for that June timeframe. I think it's something that we should be doing to welcoming not just the participants from the 49 different states in our country, but acknowledging the athletes from our own Seminole County. I think that is an accomplishment, and I think that we should be cheering them on. So if we can bring back something to our board, county manager, if there's support to do that, I think it'd be appropriate that we all stand behind them and with them, those athletes next year. Is there a consensus to ask staff to bring something back?
There's certainly consensus on my part. I would simply add that that operation is a finely tuned.
Oh, I know that.
They're scheduled to the minute, and a parade may not work well, so we,
That's why I'm asking for the staff to bring something back to see what's appropriate.
I think it would be appropriate for our staff to reach out to them to
Figure
see
it
if we
out,
can
yeah.
do something.
Yep.
I'm not asking for this is it, I'm just
No.
trying to find out what that is.
I think that's fine.
End of my report.
Thanks very
Can I
much.
ask you to repeat the date on the veterans? Was that September 25th?
September 25th.
A very fine day.
Somebody's birthday.
That's why we picked it.
District 2.
Well, thank you very much. I won't go into the airport. Commissioner Laurie has covered that pretty good as far as the 2 new airlines coming in. So I won't bore folks with this. Brandon has been accommodating to bring up a map that I wanted to share with my fellow commissioners and with the audience. Brandon, if you could bring the layers up on that. And if you would hit the protected areas button.
So this is the digital commissioner showing a map. Mine was the analog.
So I wanted to share with everyone, you all have heard me talk about, I've been working on this since I arrived, and the folks over at GIS, County Attorney's Office, have been very helpful in identifying, and this is still a work in progress. But what I wanted to share, if you can close the tab and maybe blow the map up larger. You know, we've been doing a lot of talking about where we are headed, where we're going to end up, what's going on now, and so forth. And this map is going to be very important, I believe, to that discussion, in that if you look at the far left side, that's your Wekiva protection area on the west side of the county, which we know there's only certain things that can be done over there. If you look at the far right side of the map, you'll see the red checkered dotted line. That is the entire eastern rural area, completely around there. If you look at the blue lines, those are parks, lands that are owned by the county or other county-owned properties and facilities. You'll see some of the trails outlined in straight lines and so forth, and we've yet to identify all those. Then the peach, I'll call it peach for lack of better coloration, is your city areas. If you bring that back more into the center there, Brandon. The peach areas in and around each of those cities. So as you can see, this county is about done. There's not a whole lot left to happen in this county. And that's why it's going to be important that we have these JPAs with these cities. GIS right now is working on the JPA overlay to plug into this for the city of Sanford as well as the Castleberry. So if we look at this, in the far right side, again, in the rural area, you'll see all the green area. That is the econ protection area. So we always talk and we always focus on the Wekiva, which is important. But we often forget that we have on the far right side the econ protection area, which starts in Osceola and flows all the way up through Orange into Seminole, ultimately into the St. Johns River, past Sanford and on north. If we look around Lake Jessup, we also see the green areas, which are also protected areas in and around the lake. So we have a lot of discussion about trees missing and losing trees and not enough green space and too much building going on, et cetera, et cetera. There's only certain areas, as we all know, that the county has control over. These peach areas in the city, we don't have control over. And that's why it's important we have these JPAs. So anyway, I wanted to share this with everyone. I'll make sure my office gives you all a link if you haven't already been afforded that. It's a very handy tool. We're hoping that we're going to be able to get to the point where, working with GIS, we can actually hit on each property and be able to populate exactly what it is and the land mass, as well as what dollars were utilized to purchase it, whether it was grant money, taxpayers' dollars, et cetera, et cetera. So this, I hope, staff can also utilize in our discussion about where we're headed 20, 30 years from now. So outside of that, thank you all very much. Everything else in District 2 is just fabulous.
Well, I did want to say that one thing that happened this past week out in the rural area was we had the best local little community parade ever. And, you know, sometimes out there you have to maneuver around some of the horse manure, but the Geneva Independence Day Parade is once again is clearly one of the best events that happens around the July 4th time period, and it was just wonderful. I did want to, it was already pointed out, but I wanted to remind you all again that we did have the ribbon cutting for the Emergency Mortgage Assistance Program, and I want to congratulate Allison and all of her staff, and as well as the county manager's staff for the great job that they're doing. If you haven't been out there yet, it's quite a program to help those that are technologically challenged or lack of access to technology to really have help when it comes to mortgage assistance.
Had
and
11
everything.
people use it since it opened on Monday. 11 people stop in.
And also, there's only 500 folks that will be eligible.
Well, probably 300 if we're going to stop at 500 applications.
Thank you. And if the 55% works, maybe a few more than that, 55%. But, okay, so I wanted to let everybody know that that was, that is now implemented by this county, and I think it's another great program for our citizens that are in need. What Commissioner Lockhart failed to tell you all is that she was selected for the board of directors in the district. We almost came to blows there, not her and I, but she and another county commissioner. And
Well, I wanted it.
and she will tell you that I came over there very quickly to make sure that there was a prep. But she is now the on the board of directors of the Florida Association of Counties as one of 40 members. There's approximately 50 members of the board, 41 designated for each state senate district. So she is that. I also want, and congratulations. I also wanted to let you all know that tomorrow, Altamont Springs is hosting the Babe Ruth Baseball Championships for 8-year-olds. I'm very excited to see those 8-year-olds out there, but this is the state, not state, I'm sorry, this is the regionals, I believe, all throughout the southeast that they will be doing. And I think also on the 17th, we have Commissioner Zimbauer's birthday celebration.
Oh, yes, thank you.
To.
The big 6-0.
Well, you're just joining a few of us already. And on the 20th, there is, this month, there is a special board meeting for the Expressway Authority, again, to continue the long-term discussion about Brightline. It is still up in the air and may, quite frankly, be postponed or extended, the discussion, because there's still, right now, we're trying to get a clear number of what it would take to go to the two various routes, one going to International, one going to from the airport to Disney. Since on the commission, or on the, one other thing, I don't know if any of you were able to see, it was televised, I mean, it was written up in the Sentinel, but it was also put in on PBS, the WUCF, the Fellowship of the Springs. We've talked a lot about water today. It's a 2-part series, 2 hours. I was very honored to be one of the people that they interviewed, but I will tell you, if you want to learn, and it's not a pretty picture, quite frankly, but if you want to learn some of the concerns that we have about the springs, which is probably the greatest natural resource, internal that we have here in Florida. I'm not, the beaches clearly are, I mean, outside of the Gulf and the beaches, but, internal, we have the most springs, natural springs, and beautiful springs of any other place in the world. And so if you get a chance to look at that, I would suggest that you do it. Other folks like Jeb Bush and those were on that. And just to give you an example, and I know I sometimes talk a lot about water, but it is important. If you look at the economic impact of 15 tons of dead fish from over on the bay from a number of different causes. It's just, the red tide is upon us again. As we all indicate, we have the blue-green algae in a couple of our lakes here in Seminole County and other places. It's just, it's an ongoing problem that it's not just an environmental disaster, it's an economic disaster as we go along. And that includes the largest number of manatee kills ever in Florida's history this year, which is very tough. I did want to mention something about that, Commissioner Zimbauer. With the Wekiva Protection Area obviously is, if you look, part of Commissioner, in the southwest, part of Commissioner Lockhart and I's district, that's probably the most intensely densely populated, and there is a reason why this county is the third most densely populated county in the state. The last thing on the chairman's report, since you all have had a lot of fun with me today concerning meetings. We have had retreats, started an early budget, COVID again, as Commissioner Zimbauer did. But since we've implemented this, we have not had an outside the commission meeting work session, which I think these things have worked out fairly well. And today, just today, if you go back and look at all the different work sessions we've done, we made recommendations that our staff can go back to on natural lands, which has been on our agenda for a long time, tree protection, which has been on our agenda, net density, the ILA, and notification, all of which have been issues that have been going on and on and on that today we either settled and or moved forward on. And although all the citizens may not agree that we went far enough, I didn't hear one that were complaining that we didn't address it in a much more positive way. So I'm just proud of all of you. And with that, we've got 10 minutes before 5 o'clock. And no, I'm not going to take any more.
Yep.
Commissioner Lockhart.
So I neglected to say, I have some freebies down there on the desk. I gave out some little favors at the house, and since I know not everyone could be there, I want to offer them to you all. They're seeds that I harvested that are echinacea, dill, and coriander. So grab a seed packet and plant a butterfly-loving plant. Yes.
Yay.
Thank you. That was great.
Nice.
Anything else for the good of the order, anyone?
For the good of the order, I would just like to remind everybody that vaccines are still available and we should still be getting them.
Thank you.
Amen.
Anything else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for a very productive meeting. Meeting adjourned.